up at Waterfall or Waterfowl. That section of the R59 under pressure due to protesting, burning tyres and at least one burning truck. If you need to go between Mayerton, Vereeniging and Joburg, use the R82 route through Walkerville this morning is your alternative route. And if you're driving into Cape Town side, the M2 looks fairly busy, passing Khayelitsha towards the airport runway, and the M7 already queuing out of Mitchell's Plain to Samora Michelle. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Byrne.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
It's just gone 8 minutes after 6 on this Wednesday, the 11th of June, 2025. Good morning and welcome to it, the Wednesday edition of the Morning Brief here on SAFM 104 to 107. Come, let's huddle together for the next 3 hours, informing and engaging each other on the key issues of the day, as well as sharpening each other's perspectives on those issues. Among what we'll tell you this morning will be this. It's the weather that's dominating the headlines, as you heard there in the news with N. Musa, as well as the traffic updates from Rob Byrne. The devastating human toll in particular, whose full extent is becoming clearer as emergency, disaster relief and aid agencies in several provinces wade through the affected communities and areas. In the past few days, we've had it all, from the heavy snowfall to flooding, gusting winds to punishing cold and icy weather conditions. The aftermath, a fair amount of devastation, including this. Authorities in the Eastern Cape confirming that at least 7 people, and I've seen reporting that suggests many more, but officially the number stood at 7 last night, confirming that 7 people have died in the devastating flooding and wintry conditions that have hit the province, with the epicenter of the devastation being the OR Tambo district municipality, where scenes of homes completely submerged in muddy waters have shocked many across the country. You can only imagine what that has done to those communities. The death toll could even be higher, with several people still unaccounted for, including a group of children who we are told were traveling by scholar transport and their vehicle was reportedly swept away by flood waters. So it's really a devastating story that we're going to have to focus on and get more detail. At 7:10 then, in the second hour of the show, we'll be touching base with PLO Oliphant, who is the Eastern Cape Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs spokesperson who speaks on behalf of that department, to just get an update and touch base on those search and rescue, as well as the relief work that is happening in many of the devastated parts of that particular province. Immediately after that conversation, we'll be speaking to the mayor of the Greater Kokstad municipality. That's Luanda Madikizela. And that part of the country, of course, dealing with a different phenomenon, southern KwaZulu-Natal and into the Eastern Cape. That part has been severely affected by snowfalls that have forced the closure of several roads, including the N2 highway between Kokstad and Pietermaritzburg, as well as the R603 between Tacoma and Reit. So authorities there are urging motorists and snow chasers to avoid the area entirely due to dangerous conditions and severe congestion that has been caused by stranded vehicles. So we'll be getting an update from the mayor about that situation. Many parts blanketed in white snow. It may look pretty, but in many instances, the suffering and, just the bitter cold and the difficulty of coping with it all, especially in vulnerable communities, that's what we are dealing with, and we'll try and get as full a picture for you as we possibly can. So moving away then from the weather just a little bit then. Remember the time when you and I used to track the COVID-19 variants, and we could easily mouth off Beta, Delta, Omicron, etc. Well, as scientists told us, it's likely that variants of COVID-19 will continue to manifest in communities, and we will have to live with the virus constantly circulating in populations. Well, a new COVID-19 variant, NHB B.1.8.1 is beginning to gain traction in the US and globally, particularly in Asia. First identified in January 2025, the variant has now been detected in over 20 countries and is currently under close surveillance by health agencies. While the World Health Organization, the WHO, currently assesses its public health risk as low, it does consider the variant to be what they call a variant under monitoring, VUM. So my guest in the next few minutes will be one of those healthcare professionals who became rock stars during our COVID-19 crisis, Professor Tulio de Oliveira. I'm pretty sure you remember him. He'll be talking to me in the next few minutes and just telling us the Minister of Health has said there's no need to panic about this variant, but we'll get fuller details from a scientific perspective. The Morning Brief team is at full strength and once again ready and willing and able to serve you. And Musa with your hourly and half-hourly news updates. Rob Byrne keeping track of your traffic. Zaikan is at the sports desk. Melissa Buta with the Morning Brief in brief, and that's coming up shortly. Dauleng Lechela is always right on the money with your business and market updates, as well as Mo Africa, Sipho Mantula with your Africa update at around 20 to 7 this morning. Through it all, do weigh in on these and other conversations. Please call me on 086 000 2032. I'll take your WhatsApp voice notes if you send them to 061 410 4107. On social media, we are and always have been on X. We are at SAFM Radio. And we are SAFM Radio on Facebook and Instagram. And as always, we are live on our YouTube channel, and that is SAFM Radio. So let's get the Wednesday edition of the Morning Brief started.
This Youth Month, SAFM celebrates the spirit, power, and potential of young South Africans. Join us as we dive into conversations that matter, from innovation to education and skills for the changing world, empowering youth for meaningful economic participation. Because at SAFM, we're not just talking, we're leading the conversations that move us. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
So the first file we will open then in your briefing folder for this morning is the Morning Brief in brief with Melissa Buta. And that comes, with Melissa. Let's start with the update that has come through from the president about the national dialogue. This is something that was mooted last year around the elections, and from time to time the president has referred to it. Now he's giving more detail on how it will unfold.
Indeed. Morning, Thulasizwe. The president has announced the launch of an inclusive national dialogue to address the country's pressing challenges such as poverty, inequality, unemployment, crime, and corruption. This people-led process, supported by various sectors of society, aims to forge a shared national vision and a new social impact. A national convention will be held on the 15th of August of this year to set the agenda, with a second convention planned for early 2026 to finalize a program of action. This process will involve local, sectoral, provincial and national consultations, and an eminent persons group of respected leaders from diverse backgrounds has been appointed to guide the dialogue, and the secretariat will be housed at NADLEC. An interministerial committee chaired by Deputy President and a steering committee will support the implementation of this. The national dialogue aims to unite all South Africans in shaping the country's future and advancing Vision 2030 and the National Development Plan.
Yeah, I'll be keen to hear what other people have to say about that particular process, because it would seem we do have a national dialogue right on this station on a daily basis. And at least to me, that points to, the value that people see in engaging each other. But let's see how it is received as an idea at a national level. The Minister of Water and Sanitation making an appearance before the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. What came out of that?
So Minister Phemi Majodina has clarified that South Africa is not facing a bulk water crisis, but rather challenges in water distribution and access at a local level. Appearing before SCOPA, she highlighted that municipal debt to water boards, now at 25 billion, is worsening the situation of the country's 144 water operators. 100 and 5 are underperforming, contributing to widespread water shortages. Majodina emphasized that the National Department's ability to intervene is limited, prompting reforms to separate service authority from service provision to improve accountability and delivery of water services.
And in Johannesburg, there goes that conundrum when it gets cold and then you are urged to use less electricity. What's City Power, the agency that's responsible for electricity in Joburg? What are they saying about that?
So amid these terrible weather conditions, Thulasizwe City Power has issued an urgent appeal to Johannesburg residents and businesses to reduce electricity consumption. They are saying that, it's putting the power grid under severe strain, with demand spiking due to heaters and other appliances. Over 3,000 outage calls were reported on Monday alone, particularly in the inner cities of Johannesburg. The utility warns that between 6 and 9 in the morning and 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. are the peak hours. These pose a great risk to the network overload, and they are urging residents to please play their part in ensuring that they use electricity wisely and they also use their heating appliances safely. But they do have emergency teams on high alert regardless.
Lastly, Melissa, news out of the courts. I see that Operation Dudula is back in the spotlight, but not for a good reason.
Yes, so several NGOs, including Kopanang Against Africa's Xenophobia and Abahlali Basemjondolo, have taken Operation Dudula to the Johannesburg High Court, accusing the group of unlawful xenophobic actions against foreign nationals. Legal counsel argued that Operation Dudula harasses foreigners by conducting illegal document checks, shutting down businesses, evicting people, and blocking access to public services like healthcare and education, all without legal authority. The NGOs are also seeking court orders compelling the police and the Department of Home Affairs to stop allegedly collaborating with the group and to properly investigate crimes linked to it. Police are further accused of failing to, assist foreign nationals trying to report abuse. Although Operation Dudula is not opposing the case, police and Home Affairs are contesting some parts of the legal challenge. So this one is one to watch closely.
Absolutely.
To see how it'll play out.
All right. Thank you for that. That's Melissa Puta with your morning brief in brief.
Thulasizwe Simelane is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
Yeah, so yesterday I huffed and puffed my way through the many, many warnings that the South African Weather Service issued out. And in fact, I was skeptical and I thought, let me summarize. But the importance of these warnings was underscored when those conditions played out exactly as the Weather Service had predicted. So that's why we have that commitment that where there are warnings, we will prioritize those always. So let's start with those then. There are two of them. The first one is an orange level 6 warning. It says damaging waves resulting in damage to coastal infrastructure, risk to medium vessels dragging anchors, and those conditions are expected between East London and Port Edward, and that is in the Eastern Cape. Then you have a yellow level 4 warning. Damaging winds and waves resulting in localized disruption of small harbors and or ports for a short period of time. Small vessels at risk of taking on water and capsizing in locality. Difficulty in navigation, for example, small vessels in short period, steep waves and hampered progress due to strong winds. And localized disruptions to beachfront activities. For example, closure of beaches for swimming, shore or rock angling, and those conditions are expected along the coast of KwaZulu-Natal. The one thing I can say, though, is that the Weather Service could hire someone who writes these warnings. They're technical and therefore need to be written much better than they are at the moment. But anyway, the rest of your weather looks like this. Pretoria will be fine with a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 14. Johannesburg, fine, 3 to 11. Mbombela, fine, becoming partly cloudy by the afternoon, 7 to 22. Polokwane, fine, with a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 19. Mahikeng, fine, 1 to 16. Bloemfontein, fine 1 to 14. Kimberley, fine 1 to 14. Uppington will be fine with a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 16. Cape Town will be fine with a minimum of 11 and a maximum of 17. George will be partly cloudy in the morning. Otherwise, it will be fine with a minimum of 9 and a maximum of 17. Gqeberha will be cloudy with a chance of early morning rain. Otherwise, partly cloudy. 12 to 18. East London will be cloudy with a chance of morning rain, otherwise partly cloudy. The temperature there in East London will be a minimum of 13 and a maximum of 18. Durban will be partly cloudy, 15 to 20. Richards Bay, partly cloudy, 18 to 20. And lastly, Pietermaritzburg, partly cloudy, 6 to 15.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
What percentage of these schools, these initiation schools, are effectively illegal or illegitimate and they needed to be shut down? What would you think?
My brother, you cannot have a percentage because some will be opening for the first time as we are going to the winter season. That is why we're saying a school that will not have been registered will not be allowed to operate.
The Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Velinkosi Tlabisa.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM. Find the podcast at safm.co.za.
In a land scorched by the sun and shaped by time, life refuses to surrender. From the silent stalk of the Arabian leopard to the resilient march of the sand gazelle, witness nature's fiercest survivors. Arabian Inferno, a journey into one of Earth's most extreme habitats where every day is a battle for survival. This is the wild. This is Arabian Inferno. Sundays at 6 p.m. on S3. Open up.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Yeah, we're just battling a little bit to get a hold of Professor Tulio de Oliveira, and we wanted to tell you about this new COVID-19 variant. It's NHB 1.8.1. I don't know if that's how you say it in the medical field, but anyway, that's how you that's what you have there. And we're told that it is beginning to gain traction in the United States and globally, at least 20 countries. In fact, I think the number stands around 22 or more countries where it has been identified. It was first identified in January this year. The World Health Organization, and this is important to stress, currently assesses its public health risk as being low. And mutations may make it more transmissible, though, than previous variants. But the WHO does consider it to be a variant under monitoring, VUM, variant under monitoring. And the health minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, telling us that there's no need to panic about the new variant. So that's the story, but we will pick it up at a later stage. Of course, in the coming days, we can still pick up the conversation. It's not going away. What we can do immediately, though, is take some of your calls. Let me speak to Khotso in Malutia Pofung. Good morning to you, Khotso. You want to weigh in on the possibility of the Johannesburg mayor facing a motion of no confidence?
Goeiemôre Thulasizwe Simelane.
Yeah.
During winter time, don't visit Maluti.
I know. You've got that name, please. Maluti, there. And that's enough. Please. That's all I need to know, Maluti. Before you go to that story, Khotso, let me tell you, I once visited a friend of mine, Marumo Kekana, at his home. What's that town? In Zastron in the Free State.
Zastron Matagi.
I've never been so cold. I slept wearing a coat. Anyway, go ahead. Tell me about the motion of no confidence.
Tula, this is not a motion of no confidence. It just we use that phrase, a motion of no confidence. Here we are testing all the political parties that are in Joburg are there for the interest of the people of Joburg. Because now the problem, a serious challenges the people of Joburg that are facing is when it's the ANC that is looting Joburg. You see now what Panyaza Lisusi and Damrero they are doing. They are looting Joburg to enrich Alexander Mafia. That the one that belong to the empty-minded Deputy President Paul Mashati. And this thing is happening as a collaboration of a small political party, including Herman Mashaba, because the main of Herman Mashaba, it was to assist the ANC to continuing to loot Joburg.
So you support...
As Mandashi on the people of Joburg 6 years back ago that Herman Mashaba is the most dangerous politician that the people of Joburg, they must not trust him.
So,
this is not a motion of no confidence. It's a test.
In essence, are you saying you support what the DA is saying in tabling a motion of no confidence? Is that what you're telling me? Given how critical you are of the ANC?
According to me, the mayor of Joburg, he was supposed to be fired a long time ago, together with the Panyaza Lisusi. Right. I was expecting up to so far Cyril Ramaphosa. He will take action to remove Panyaza Lisusi in Joburg because Panyaza Lisusi is the biggest problem in Joburg. He looting Joburg to enrich the Alexander Mafia. He takes the economy of the people of Joburg handed over.
Great stuff. Let's leave it there for this morning. That's Khotso there in Malutia Pofung weighing in on issues in Johannesburg. You may want to call in and weigh in on what Khotso has had to say this morning.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning. Let's kick off with Bafana coach Hugo Broos calling himself a happy man after his youthful side beat Mozambique 2-0 at the Peter Mokaba Stadium last night. Kwaiba and substitute Cupido scored in the second half following a goalless draw against Tanzania last week. Now it's several young players impressing. The coach's World Cup qualifier selection in September just got tougher. Elsewhere, South Africa and defending champions Angola have booked their semi-final place at the COSAFA Cup 2025 with a bumper 4 matches that were played in Mangaung, Bloemfontein yesterday. South Africa's nervy 0-0 draw with Mauritius was enough to see them top Group A with a helping hand from Zimbabwe, while Angola defeated Malawi to finish top of Group B. South Africa advanced to the semi-finals after they topped their pool on goal difference. They now await the winner of Group D in the last 4, while Angola will clash with the top side in Group C. Other news in sport, it is Australia booking their place at the 2026 World Cup in North America with a 2-1 win over Saudi Arabia took place in Jeddah yesterday. And finally, cycling news, Spain's Ivan Romero scored the biggest win of his career, claiming victory in Stage 3 of the Criterium du Dauphiné. The 21-year-old Movistar rider attacked the breakaway group 6 kilometers from the finish, marking his first World Tour win as Matthew van der Poel and others were unable to catch him. Romero also took the lead in the general classification, moving ahead of Italy's Jonathan Milan, who finished 5 minutes and 46 seconds behind. We'll be back. More sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, 3 police officers from the White River Flying Squad have been arrested while allegedly escorting a vehicle loaded with over 100 bags of dagga on the N4 toll road near Matsulu in Mpumalanga. Struggle stalwart Mavuso Msimang says there's a sense of urgency in South Africa to tackle challenges the country is facing, especially the high unemployment rate. President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced a national convention will take place on the 15th of August this year to set the agenda for a national dialogue on the country's challenges. and humanitarian aid organisation Gift of the Givers has stepped in to provide temporary relief to displaced residents of the Skit informal settlement in Butterworth in the Eastern Cape. Heavy rainfall led to localised flooding in the area, leaving hundreds of people stranded. At least 9 people have died. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Urgent update for motorists driving between the Vaal and Joburg. Avoid the R59 this morning. It is now closed. Protesting erupting early hours this morning, burning tyres, and at least one truck that's on fire in that area as well. So it's a full closure, north and southbound, between Randval Road and the 550, the Heidelberg Road, or Clip River Road on the other side of that junction, if you like. So full closure, lots of backlogging into the closure, lots of backlogging on the local alternative route that basically runs parallel to the 59. The advice to go Vaal Joburg this morning would be the R82 via Walkerville is your alternative. Other issues this morning, N3 Joburg bound at Spruitview looking quite heavy. Situation south of Durban at Kokstad. Roads are open this morning. There is some concern about the usability of the 617 between Kokstad and Underberg. There will be a lot of extra traffic arriving into that area this morning with onlookers and sort of those that want to have a look at it and experience the snow. Our advice would be, if you want to do that, go as late as you possibly can. That snow, there's a lot of it. It'll keep conditions chilly. It'll lead to icy and slippery conditions. So better to travel later this morning rather than try and get there too early. Cape Town, N2 inbound, slow this morning from Khayelitsha, backlogging from Spine Road through towards the airport runway, and Baden Powell along the coast. Very slow these days at this hour. Mitchell's Plain through to Strandfontein Road is the delay. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning to Ndauling Lechela with the first update of the morning. Ndauling, you are the bearer of bad news. Straight off the bat, you hit us with bad news. Tell us about the World Bank and them lowering their expectations for global growth in this year.
I mean, Thulas, you've been the bearer of bad news all week with the weather report, so I had to just add in.
You're trying to match me. You're trying to outdo me.
And I think this news really does outdo your weather news, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The latest financial institution to cut its growth forecast is the World Bank, slashing its global growth outlook for the year to 2.3%, and this is from 2.7% in a report that it released in January. The bank has pointed to increased trade tensions and policy uncertainty driven by President Trump's tariffs. Now, global trade in the meantime is expected to grow by only 1.8% this year, down from 3.4% last year. The bank's chief economist, Indemit Gill, warns that without a swift change, living standards could be severely impacted, with global GDP growth averaging just 2.5% in the 2020s, the slowest pace since the 1960s. Advanced economies are expected to grow by 1.2% this year, with the US economy projected to grow by 1.4%, a sharp slowdown from 2.8% last year. Emerging markets and developing economies will face challenges like suppressed commodity prices and increased volatility. And so the bank says developing economies per capita GDP is projected to be 6% below pre-pandemic levels by 2027. And it could take these countries years to recoup those economic losses. Despite this gloomy forecast, though, the bank estimates that the risk of a global recession remains below 10%.
They're not so bad news, if you can call it that, given the stop-start nature of these things. Well, we're starting again. It seems the US and China have some kind of a, détente, agreeing to resume their trade truce.
Yes, they've confirmed that they have reached a framework agreement on trade after those talks the past 2 days, aiming to resolve the long-standing trade disputes. Now, the agreement, pending approval from US President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping, addresses issues like rare earth exports, a critical point of contention. China's restrictions on rare earth exports to the US are expected to be resolved during the framework's implementation, while the US is likely to roll back some restrictions on sales of advanced technology to China. The talks build on previous discussions in Geneva, Switzerland, where both sides agreed to reduce tariffs. The agreement is seen as a positive step towards resolving the tensions, but experts note that challenges remain, including the U.S. trade deficit with China and China's industrial policies. Now, Zhuang Zhu, senior economist at Nactisis, cautions that while the agreement reflects a mutual commitment to de-escalating tensions and continued dialogue, it's uncertain whether it will lead to concrete agreements or substantive breakthroughs.
Right, lastly, Dowling, just recap for us then market activity, how it closed yesterday and how those countries that have opened are looking.
So on the back of that trade truce continuing, U.S. stocks closed in the green overnight, with the Nasdaq leading those gains. It was up 0.63%. The mood similar here at home, with stocks closing in positive territory. The all share up 0.25%, boosted by a near 1.3% increase in the financials. Meanwhile, in the currency scene, the rand is charging ahead, looking like it'll break under the 1770 mark. It's sitting at 1771 to the dollar this hour. And then lastly, in Asia, markets trading mostly higher as well, following the broadly positive cues from Wall Street overnight, amid what seems to be easing trade tensions between the US and China.
All right, Ntauleng, we'll catch up with you in the second hour of the show. That's Ntauleng Lechela. She'll be back with more insights for you just after 7:30 here on The Morning Brief.
Africa Update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning to Mo Africa. Raz, good morning. Let's start with this story around the passing on of the former Zambian president, Edgar Lungu. You're telling us this morning that there's a bit of, difference of opinion, let's call it that, between the Zambian government and the Lungu family about his the repatriation of his mortal remains.
Refreshing morning, Thulas and Jumbo Africa. Thulas, remember we've been reporting of the former president Edgar Lungu since his passing last week, that today it is expected for him to be back at home in Zambia. But there's a family dispute now in terms of how the family feels that they will want to handle this repatriation of Edgar Lungu's remains from South Africa back to Zambia today. The issues to us are around how he was treated. You will recall between 2022 and 2023, there was issues of removing of his privileges. And as a family, they've used this concept to us that he left Zambia quietly and he will return quietly, privately. This is the wish that comes from the family. You will also understand that the government wanted to have the state funeral to us, where they wanted to tell the family who must be at the family, who must at that funeral, who must preside the prayers and all those aspects. But the family, it seems that they are not happy because they know that how government treated Edgar Lungu in 2023 when they removed his retirement benefits, including security detail, diplomatic passport, and some of his benefits. Now, the family is not happy with the government of Hakainde Hichilema about how
There's a lot of echoes of what we've seen in the past, right? Isn't it the same script that played out when Michael Sata passed away? I seem to recall. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Tell me about what's happening in Togo, Sipho. Why are there protests and calls for the resignation of the president in that country?
It's almost 20 years with President Faure Kansebe, who took out from his father as the president, that over this week there were protests calling for his resignation on the issues that he wanted to amend the constitution. As you know, Thulas has been the norm on this term limit, that he wanted to be back in parliament, and opposition calling this a constitutional coup. Now, protesters were arrested this week. Only 25 are still in custody, and in the Amnesty International is calling for the release of these opposition leaders who are calling for the removal of the current president. Remember, Togo at some point wants to pull out of ECOWAS because of these issues that talks about presidential term limits. But there are tensions in Lome that are going on in terms of the protests that have been going on since last week and even this week.
And then closer to home, talk to me about what's happening in Botswana. The president, you and I call our boy. He asked us to call him our boy, Advocate Dumaboko. He's contemplating developing a military hub in that country. Tell me what that is about.
Thulas, President Boko, he has been engaging on what he called embracing a new dawn in defense capabilities in Botswana. Now he meets with Nigeria this week on with the Botswana International University of Science, coming with a new idea of developing what he called a military industrial complex and national security. He's engaging with West Africa in this instance, Thulas, looking at the capabilities of your satellites, of your drone technologies. Now, this is how we see Botswana Defense Force moving with the 21st century technology to us in terms of Duma Boko, raising these issues of this new dawn of defense capabilities between Gaborone as well as Abuja. And this is interesting to us because we have known the people of Botswana being peaceful, but it appears that they are strengthening their force when it comes to military intelligence, military capabilities.
Yeah, of course, that would put them in competition with the likes of Denel and others in this country as an industry that produces, that does military and defense production. Lastly, in your historical archives, Sipho, tell me about what happened on the 11th of June, 1935.
Thulas, this elder is less known in our historical archives, but it is important to pay tribute to Ntate Molefe Pheto, what we will call a musician, a writer, a former anti-apartheid organizer who was once in prison in John Foster Square, interrogated for 3 nights under intense security police interrogation, standing and without sleep. We are talking about Ntate Molefe Pheto, who's turning 90 years today, Thulas, and there will be a celebration of his birthday in his farm in West Rand and as well in July. This is one of the elders that Thulas has said. He went to exile in London, studied music and became a teacher, a member of the PAC and the Black Consciousness Movement. He formed Music, Drama, Arts and Literature Institute Mdali that was based in Soweto. And from our listeners, if they want to know more about this elder Thulas, he wrote 2 books, A Night Fell, Memoirs of a Political Prisoner in South Africa, published 1983, The Bull from Morileng, Vistas of Home and Exile, published in 2014. Very rare to get some of these books, Thulas, but this is one of the elders who others will tell you in Robben Island. He used to create what we'll call a skelem chi, Thulas, where people have to escape in Robben Island. Yeah, this was the elder who will do what he called the skeleton key in Robben Island. A farmer also, a writer, a filmmaker that we should honor in his lifetime to us. He's still alive. He's turning 90 years. These are 9 decades of Ntate Molefe Pheto. He also changed his name from Phineas, sticking with his name of Molefe Pheto, and his farm, he called it Bangadile, to the people who are sulking. When he was given that land, he felt that people were not happy with his return back home. As I said, this is one of the elders that we should remember, Ntate Molefe Pheto, who's turning 90 years, born in Alexandra Township. Asante sana Thulas, as was leading the conversation in SFM, observing the Soweto uprising man.
Happy birthday to the sweet old man. Thank you for that. That's Sipho Mantula with your Africa update for this morning.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
Let's go to the story now. The country, as you can feel, is in the firm grip of the first of this winter's cold fronts and storm systems, which have brought with them widespread snowfall, icy rain, gusting winds, a fair amount of flooding, especially in the Eastern Cape, not to mention bone-chillingly cold weather across much of the country. With the arrival of a cut-off low-pressure system, heavy snow fell across mountainous areas, closing key passes and prompting weather warnings. As more winter systems are expected to follow, forecasters warn that cold and stormy conditions are far from over. Let's speak to Dr. Lizel Dyson, who is an associate professor in meteorology at the Meteorology Department of Geography, within the Department of Geography and Geoinformatics and Meteorology at the University of Pretoria. Good morning to you, Doc, and thank you for your time this morning. I'm pretty sure that I butchered, your designation, but please forgive me for that. But tell me about these weather systems that we are experiencing right now. They seem to be quite extreme. The snowfall's quite intense, leading to the closure of passes, as I just described, flooding, gusting winds, trees falling. How typical are these conditions for this time of year in South Africa?
Good morning, Thulasizwe. It's nice to be with you this morning. It's blessed are those of us who have a nice warm bed to sleep in, isn't it? See, minimum temperatures this morning is over the entire country is close to zero, and places, of course, less than zero. And with the wind, it makes it feel even colder. So this is the cut-off flow, as you mentioned. They're common in winter. They don't occur every 3 weeks or something like that, but they do occur in winter. And when they do occur, they cause the type of weather that we see that we saw in the last few days. So it is not. I know people don't like it if we say that, but it's not that strange for this time of the year for us to get cut-off flows. This was an intense cut-off flow, causing the floods. I think Umtata was quite flooded, and further into the interior over Elliot and places like that, there was heavy snowfall. So, this is similar to what happened in KZN when they had the floods. It's just that this weather system movement was a little bit. The movement of the weather system was a little bit different than what happened when it happens in KZN. So, luckily, KZN was mostly spared this time around, and the Eastern Cape was hardest hit.
So we talk about this cut-off flow, and I'd like you to please explain it to our listeners what we mean when we say cut-off flow. And the reason I ask that is that it seems to me, I don't know, I would want to understand why the same weather system produces different outcomes in different regions. I don't know if you understand my question. Flooding and icy rain in one part, snow in another part, and then gusting winds in other parts, and generally cold weather conditions. So I'd want to understand how this one system produces what seems to be varied types of weather.
This is quite a complex question you've just asked me.
It's 6:48.
A cut-off flow is, the winds generally blow from west to east. That's like if you do an average map, the winds will be blowing from west to east. So what a cut-off flow then is if a low-pressure system, a perturbation develops in this east to west flow, and you get a low-pressure system that is cut off from this general westerly flow. So that is basically what a cut-off flow is. Now, the weather associated with a cut-off flow depends on the season. We saw in April 2021 when KZN had the floods, it was still quite close to summer, so it was warm, moist air that was brought into the country. In this example, this cut-off flow in this case, it's not always, but in this case it's associated with a surface called front. So the air that came into the country was ice cold. It was, it came from the polar regions, and then it invaded the country to cause the onshore flow. And then it's a combination of pressure gradients, what happens at the surface, what happens further up in the atmosphere, that determines whether if you only get strong winds or if you then get also heavy rainfall. Like I say, closer to the coast, at Mthatha, there was rainfall. But as soon as you moved into the interior, where you get higher elevation, there was the snowfall occurred. Sure. So it's very much a combination of things that causes the weather to happen as it does.
So, to the best of our ability, are we able to talk about what trends we can expect going forward? Whether this sets us up for any predictable trends in terms of how mild or how intense this particular winter will be?
Thulasizwe, we're living in a climate that is warming up. So on average, and the seasonal forecasters tells us that this winter season, the temperatures are going to be normal to above normal. That doesn't mean that this type of weather event cannot occur. Because, temperatures will start to recover from today. Today will still be quite cold, but then gradually the temperatures will increase again. So And also the other thing is that the seasonal forecast is also predicted at below normal rainfall for the Western Cape for this winter. And the Western Cape is the area that gets most of the cold fronts. So yes, there will be these weather events that causes cold weather to occur. But in general, the situation for a lot of rainfall and a lot of cold this winter is not very high.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time. That's encouraging to know. That's Professor Lizel Dyson, who is Associate Professor in Meteorology, and that is at the Department of Geography and Geoinformatics and Meteorology at the University of Pretoria.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just staying with the weather down in Kokstad, the area that was hardest hit with the snowfall yesterday. Still a lot of snow around. Most of the roads that we've been saying are open. We've had that confirmed by RTI commanders at RTI saying, roads are open. There is some concern on the 617. There may still be some restrictions there between Kokstad and Underberg. It's a very busy route. It will be extra busy today because there'll be a lot of people that want to go and have a look and grab some pictures and play in that snow. So the 617 is probably a route that maybe you should be avoiding. Then you may well get up there and then sort of be turned back because there's some grading works or some snow that's still blocking the road. The N2 Harding through Kokstad and then Kokstad down through Mount Aleph via Brooksneck. That's all open. The R56 appears to be open out of Kokstad towards Matati Alley as well. So just take it easy. And if you are on your way down into Kokstad to have a look at that snow, the later you can leave it, the better, because with the heavy snowfall that's lying on the grounds there, that just adds to the chill and that can cause some black ice and slippery conditions, and you could be in all sorts of trouble. So go later is the call if you have to go there. The other big stories we're watching this morning, just staying in KZN, the run into Pinetown is very heavy on the M7, heavier than normal. Obviously, Stapleton Road closure, diverting a lot of traffic onto that M7, so it's really badly backed up on your way up to St John's Avenue territory. R59, south of Joburg, full closure in place between Randval Road and the 550 Heidelberg Road. That's protesting that erupted overnight. Both sides of the R59 closed. A lot of congestion in that area. Use the R82. The Walkerville Road is the alternative routing around that. And Cape Town, just heads up, if you're coming out of Tableview this morning, there'll be a lot of stopping and starting. Lights are down on Kuberg Road at that Worksyard junction. Kuberg at Tanzanite is out. And if you turn off Kuberg onto Plattercliff and Tanzanite, opposite the refinery, also offline as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
In a land scorched by the sun and shaped by time, life refuses to surrender. From the silent stalk of the Arabian leopard to the resilient march of the sand gazelle, witness nature's fiercest survivors. Arabian Inferno, a journey into one of Earth's most extreme habitats where every day is a battle for survival. This is the wild. This is Arabian Inferno. Sundays at 6 p.m. on S3. Open up.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
Let's focus on education for a moment. Teacher unions are concerned about a deepening crisis in the education system. Overburdened and understaffed, educators across provinces are facing severe burnout and mental health challenges driven by widespread staff shortages and austerity measures. With more than 46,000 funded vacancies remaining unfilled, classrooms, we are told, are overcrowded and teachers are left to manage growing workloads with little support. Let's hear directly then from those that speak for the teachers. Let's speak to Nomusa Cembi, the SADTU national spokesperson, SADTU, the South African Democratic Teachers Union. Good morning to you and thank you for your time. Just describe in your own words, firstly, the vacancy situation within the education system. You are at the coalface of interacting with government and negotiating these conditions of service and how certain decisions, policy decisions, fiscal decisions are impacting on the ability of teachers to do their jobs. What does it look like?
Good morning, Thulasizwe, and good morning to your listeners. Yes, the vacancy situation in education is quite dire. As you said earlier, there are 46,000 vacancies or unfilled posts in our department, and this really has a negative impact on the teachers. In that, teachers have to teach overcrowded classrooms to compensate for the unfilled posts. And that really impacts on their mental well-being and leading to burnout. We conducted a survey in March this year amongst our members about the conditions that they work under, and the figures that you mentioned came from our survey. That's why we marched on the 23rd of April. We marched to the Department of Treasury, Department of Basic Education, as well as Higher Education, to demand more funding, to say to government, please stop these budget cuts, because they are not serving education. Our teachers are overburdened, leading to burnout, and at the end, leading to the poor delivery of quality education, because you cannot work productively if you are overburdened.
Is it just a shortage of teachers, or is it a matter of other staff, positions also not being filled at schools, leading to teachers having to take up extra duties?
It's mainly teachers, but also other positions are not being fulfilled. But our main focus was mainly on the teachers, because it's just ordinary teachers. It's heads of department. It's principals. So you find that most schools, government has over the years, the department has not been filling up posts, especially of principals and heads of department. You find that people are acting for a number of years and are not even paid for acting in those positions. And when you act, sometimes you do not feel empowered to take proper decisions because you are in an acting position. And that really affects the functioning of schools.
So what you found then, Nomusa, does it tally with a recent study that found that, half of the country's teachers would consider leaving the profession within the next decade if a position came up and they were able to leave? Does it contribute to a high attrition rate among teachers and demotivation?
Yes, half those studies says half would want to leave. Yes, they would want to leave, but it's not that they are leaving, because you know the situation in our country. There's high rates of unemployment. There are fewer jobs out there. But if they had options, they would leave because of the conditions they work under. They are not leaving, but they would want to leave because of the situation they are working under.
And to what extent do administrative tasks, I've heard that being mentioned quite a few times, that in addition to teaching, you have these administrative tasks that add on and pile on. To what extent does that add to that sense of burnout and inability to give individual attention in really large classes?
Yes, these administrative tasks, they do add to the workload that the teachers have got to do, and it affects their work in the classroom and their work in ensuring that they engage with the learners. So it is a dire situation, because the department is not employing, and as it doesn't employ, so teachers have got to do the extra work to compensate for those vacant posts.
Are you encouraged by what you saw in the budget? Because there was talk about, making provision for keeping teachers in the classroom, as well as trying to boost the other programs, such as the educator assistant program.
We are encouraged, but it's not enough. The gap is huge. And even the teacher assistant program, yes, we have welcomed it, but it is also not a permanent solution, because it is on a 6-month basis. We would like to see teacher assistant program being, people being employed on a permanent basis.
Yeah. All right. I've got to thank you for your time and your insights this morning. That's Nomusa Cembi, who is the SADTU national spokesperson. Brings us to 7 a.m. and Musa on standby with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, police officers arrested for escorting a vehicle loaded with dagga and hundreds displaced in Butterworth after floods. Good morning. 3 police officers from the White River Flying Squad have been arrested while allegedly escorting a vehicle loaded with over 100 bags of dagga on the N4 toll road near Matsulu in Mpumalanga. Provincial Police spokesperson Jabu Ndubane says the officers were on duty and in full uniform when they were arrested. She says the occupants of the vehicle in which the drugs were found were also arrested. They were charged with dealing in dagga.
The 3 police officers, age ranges between 32 and 49, were arrested after they were alleged escorting a vehicle trafficking dagga along the N4 route near Matsuluti Junction. The 3 officers were driving a marked police vehicle in full uniforms while on duty, and they were escorting a vehicle carrying 107 bags loaded with dagga. Members of Matsulu have responded after they received an intelligent information about the dodgy activities, and they cornered the 3 officers. They are facing charges in relation to corrupt activities and defeating ends of justice.
Struggle stalwart Mavuso Msimang says there's a sense of urgency in South Africa to tackle challenges the country is facing, especially the high unemployment rate. President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced a national convention will take place on the 15th of August this year to set the agenda for a national dialogue on the country's challenges. He says all sectors of society will be given a voice to determine how problems should be addressed and how to build a better country for future generations. Msimang says an inclusive dialogue is crucial because the situation in the country is dire.
The situation is really bad. You see it in the streets. People are poor. 30 years on, really poor. In fact, statistics indicate that there's been an increase. Unemployment, I was glad the president talked about, confesses that unemployment is high and there's underemployment. Worst is that it's happening among young people. So there's really a need. I don't think we should allow this not to be successful.
Meanwhile, President Ramaphosa says his deputy Paul Mashatile will chair the Interministerial Committee, which will coordinate government's contribution to the national dialogue.
An interministerial committee has been established under the chairpersonship of the Deputy President to coordinate government's contribution to the national dialogue. We will be establishing a steering committee comprised of representatives of various sectors of society to set strategic priorities and coordinate implementation of the national dialogue process. The Secretariat, which is responsible for day-to-day management of national dialogue activities, will be housed at NEDLEC.
Humanitarian aid organisation Gift of the Givers has stepped in to provide temporary relief to displaced residents of Skit informal settlement in Butterworth in the Eastern Cape. Heavy rainfall led to localised flooding, leaving hundreds of people stranded. At least 9 people have died. The search for 11 people, mostly learners, is continuing today. They went missing after minibus they were travelling in was swept away in the Mtata area. Those affected are being accommodated in municipal halls and schools. Gift of the Givers Provincial Coordinator Corinne Conradi.
At this moment, we are focusing on immediate relief items, and we will sit with our stakeholders and engage to see when mop-up operations took place, if we can continue to phase 2 to help them, because many of them are living in poverty, to help see how we can build the community together.
And finally, authorities in Los Angeles have announced an overnight curfew in the city center. Earlier, a U.S. judge denied an emergency request from the California governor, Gavin Newsom, to block the use of troops sent to L.A. to quell protests on immigration raids. Newsom says the move is illegal. Trump has called the protests a full-blown assault on public order. L.A. Mayor Karen Bass.
If you do not live or work in downtown LA, avoid the area. Law enforcement will arrest individuals who break the curfew, and you will be prosecuted. Hundreds of officers from police and sheriff departments from across the region and state are working alongside LAPD through a unified command structure.
Recapping the top story, 3 police officers from the White River Flying Squad have been arrested while allegedly escorting a vehicle loaded with over 100 bags of dacha on the N4 toll road near Matsulu in Mpumalanga. For SAFM News, I am Ann Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Here's some breaking news you might have missed. Gordon, a 44-year-old man, switched to Outsurance and now saves an unbelievable 2,794 Rand a month on his 2019 Ford Everest 2-litre automatic. Outsurance clients always get something out. Get a quote today and see how much Outsurance could save you on your car insurance. Call 08600 60,000 or visit outsurance.co.za. You always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
It's a very good morning to you in your SFM sports headlines. We're building up to the Proteas. They'll be taking on Australia. That's in the World Test Championship happening at Lord's today. It's the final. And we've got soccer action with coach Hugo Bruges, a happy man after their 2-0 win over Mozambique. Details just before 7:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. Update on the Cockstad situation. Southern parts of KZN roads are open. We've been saying that this morning. RTI now confirming with us that that is the case. So roads are open and largely passable. The only concern really is the 617. That's Cockstad through to Underberg. You may well find areas that are restricted because of snowfall along that route. But the N2 Cockstad Harding is open. Cockstad down to Mount Aylify, Brooksneck, Cockstad out to Cedarville and Matatial also open as well, but we would caution if you are amongst the many heading down to view the snow, please go later. Those conditions will lead to black ice and slippery roads early in the morning, so the later you can leave it, the better. Other top stories, staying in KZN, the drive into Pinetown, very heavy. Stapleton Road closure, forcing extra volume up that M7, so from North Dean, North Park, it is jammed up to St John's Avenue and Pinetown this morning. South of Joburg, R59 closed between Heidelberg Road and Randval. That's near Blockhouse. That's a full closure both ways due to protest action. N3 heading out of Spruitview towards Heidelberg Road. That's heavy on your way up into Joburg this morning. And Cape Town coming out of Tableview, lots of lights down. Kuburg Road at the Worksyard, then Kuburg at Tanzanite, that's the macro entrance, and then Plattercliff at Tanzanite opposite the refinery. Those lights down as well. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Byrne.
Specsavers Audiology, South Africa's largest audiology group, brings you the all-new Clarity Pro rechargeable hearing aids. Experience cutting-edge features at a price you can afford. For a limited time only, buy one Clarity Pro rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. You heard right, buy one and get 50% off the second. Visit specsavers.co.za to find your nearest store and ask for Clarity Pro today. Specsavers Audiology. Test your hearing and join the conversation. T's and C's apply.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Mzansi, Walala Wasala. Play Lotto, Lotto Plus 1 and Lotto Plus 2 for a staggering 97 million rand in total estimated jackpots this Wednesday, and you could win big. Play Lotto for an estimated 70 million rand, Lotto Plus 1 for 16 million rand, and Lotto Plus 2 for 11 million rand today. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
Right, we're doing things slightly differently in this hour because we do need to wade through quite a bit, quite a fair amount. We want to give you quick updates from those situations affected by the current inclement weather that has taken a tragic turn, particularly in the Eastern Cape, with several people confirmed to have died in the devastating flooding and wintry cold weather conditions that hit that province, especially in the OR Tambo District Municipality. Let's speak to Phelo Oliphant, who is the Eastern Cape Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Department spokesperson. Phelo, good morning and thank you for your time. Late yesterday, you gave an update of the number of people, the number of lives that had been lost in the flooding. What are you able to tell us about that situation this morning, as well as the search for those that were still unaccounted for?
Warm greeting to you and warm greetings to the SAFM listeners. As of now, 8 bodies have been recovered and they are fatal. And then 13 children who were reported missing have been found. And the situation in Umtata on the ground is dire. And however, the National Joint Flood Coordinating Committee will be meeting at 8 o'clock under the leadership of Minister Velinkosini Hlabisa. And the worst affected districts in the Eastern Cape are OR Tambo district, where I am presently, as well as Amatol.
Yeah, say a bit more about that. Tell me about the children, because that was one of the stories that we were watching closely, that there was this vehicle, scholar transport vehicle that we were told was swept away by flood waters. You are saying that those children have been found and they are safe?
Luckily, the rescue teams have recovered those children, and they have been taken to the places of safety. And the search was adjourned yesterday night, and it resumes this morning. And 7 people have been successfully, 16 in total have been successfully rescued, and they've been taken to the places of safety in the community halls in and around Umtata, thanks to the philanthropies, the Red Cross, the gift of the givers. They are giving and providing the victims of the flood with hot meals. They provided them with mattresses, as well as the duvets and the things that they need for their essential survival.
Lastly, Phelo, what does the impact look like on the ground where you are and across the province in the mainly in the most affected areas? The videos, for those of us who are watching from afar, when you see muddy waters flowing almost, at roof level and beyond, and people having to be rescued in that way, it looks scary, but I can only imagine the kind of devastation that it leaves behind. What does it look like?
Yeah, the devastation is enormous. And if you look at around the Joslovo area, informal settlement, those places that are under the flood lines are the worst affected. The houses are submerged, the shacks are submerged underwater. The electricity network system in the whole of Umtata has been severely disrupted. The electric pylons uprooted, the roads, the bridges damaged, and more potholes on the streets. It's a dire situation.
Yeah.
However, the rescue teams are on the ground now to try to repair and do mop-up operations.
All right, just lastly, confirmation that as far as you are concerned, I've seen a number of figures being cited of the number of people who have died. So far, you can say 8 people have died from that situation.
8 people have died so far.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you for your time this morning. That's Pielo Oliphant, who is the spokesperson for the Eastern Cape Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. Let's move on swiftly to Senzelwe Mzila. Senzelwe Mzila is the spokesperson for the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs in KwaZulu-Natal. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. So what we were watching there in KwaZulu-Natal is the situation to the south of the province in areas around Matatiele flowing into the Eastern Cape, snow and other conditions leading to road closures. What's the latest you can tell us about that situation?
Good morning to you, Thulasizwe, and good morning to the listeners. The province of KwaZulu has responded swiftly to the weather incidents that took place yesterday. We had multiple incidents that took place, including snow, damaging winds, and also we had heavy rains in parts of the province. Now, specifically in that area, within the Herikwala district, the areas of Kokstad, our teams worked tirelessly to ensure that the N2 is able to be opened between Kokstad and Port Shepstone. So that road was opened yesterday. Our teams are still busy with the R617. This is the road between Kokstad and Underberg. In terms of the town of Kokstad itself, the area itself, some of the roads that are leading into the town were closed, and our teams are still busy as well with that, just ensuring that snow is being removed in and across that town. The MEC has commended the good work that is being done by the local teams in the area of Greater Kokstad and the broader Herikwala district.
And part of the concern yesterday, Senzelwe, was about after the roads were closed, there were people who were stuck, on the road or on the side of the road, and there was concern about their ability to cope with the cold and just generally staying safe during that period. Tell me how that went in terms of ensuring the safety of the people and ensuring that people don't find themselves in a spot of bother.
Thank you for that, Thulasizwe. The MEC for Kokstad, Reverend Thulasizwe Simelane, has also commended the work that has been done by law enforcement agencies and communities who came forward to assist those that were stranded during that window or during that time. From the information that we have, Thulasizwe, that specific route of the N2 between Kokstad and Port Shepstone, it has been cleared, and people that were entrapped have been able to be released from the snow. Now, the one area that is of concern right now, I think, is the R617, but we do have our teams on the ground who are working tirelessly to ensure that that route is cleared and that that route is safe for passage.
Why is the R617 of concern at the moment?
Well, in terms of snow, the snow build-up in and across that area, and the road is very slippery. So there are a number of concerns, but our enforcement agencies, though, they are on the ground monitoring specifically that area.
What can you tell us about whether or not there have been casualties from these incidents across the province of KwaZulu-Natal?
Yes, well, so one of the impacts that we've had is the strong damaging winds. We had areas in the province where the winds clocked 110 kilometers per hour. So there has been excessive damage that has taken place to a number of households. Yesterday, MEC Buthelezi had a briefing where he gave a preliminary assessment that has been done by our teams on the ground, where in one of the districts, Ugu district, in the area of Umuzawantu in Harding, about 4 learners were injured when the roof in their school was blown by the wind and they got injured. Those learners have been treated at the nearest hospital. But also there's been over 200 people that have been affected just within this area. Our teams, the MEC has dispatched them, and they are on the ground now working to do full assessment. So we will have a clearer picture. But the picture that we have right now is that of widespread damage as a result of the strong winds. As we saw roofs being blown away, we saw trees as well. But also we've had issues where over 10 municipalities have had blackouts as a result of the power lines being damaged as a result of the strong winds that affected the province.
That is extensive, Senzelwe. It leads me to ask whether there'll be any conversations around potentially declaring a state of disaster in parts of the province, as well as, engagement with national government around that recovery?
The teams are on the ground as we speak right now, and they're doing assessments. I think the assessments will give us a clearer picture of where the province is. But currently, right now, the province is utilizing its own resources from the Provincial Disaster Management Center to support our municipalities to respond to this. The department as well is working closely with ESCOM as their teams as well are on the ground to ensure that communities are connected back onto the grid.
All right. I've got to thank you for your time. That's Senzelwe Mzila, who is the KwaZulu-Natal Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Departmental Spokesperson. Lastly, let's touch base now with the mayor of Greater Kokstad Municipality, that is Luanda Mantigizela. Mayor, good morning, and thank you for your time. You were at the epicenter of the snowfalls. Good morning.
And good morning to your SAFM listeners.
Sure. You were at the epicenter of the snowfalls, particularly in southern KwaZulu-Natal. Of course, there were more snowfalls in other areas around the Eastern Cape and the Free State bordering area there. But tell me about the impact in your town of the snowfalls and the disruptions that they wrought.
Indeed, Thulasizwe, this is one of the historic heavy rain snowfall that we have received as the district under Harry Gwala. But of course, there has been a number of challenges, particularly where we had to do some road closures because of the snow and the slippery of the road. But what was important is that we have worked tirelessly with the Department of Transport, law enforcement, to ensure that we reopen those particular areas that have been closed, but also to send a message, a cautionary message to our motorists to actually postpone their trips wherever they are going, because the situation on the ground was quite bad. Heavy rain, heavy snowfall, but of course, our people have always been ignorant, continuing to travel, despite the messages that has been carried out by the provincial disaster management, as well as the NEC of Transport, NEC Duma. But of course, on the ground, a lot has been happening. We've been clearing the areas, making sure that the road closures are becoming open. I can confirm that as from yesterday evening, all roads, R66 coming from Kokstad to Matatian, R617 has been reopened, N2 particularly because there have been a lot of trucks that have been stopped and asked to postpone their trips. But of course, we understand the impact it has on the economic activity that is taking place on a daily basis. But of course, we've been asking them to postpone their trips. But everything as from now, we've managed to ensure that those road closures have been open.
All of those measures that you had to take really, from what you are describing, it wasn't optional. It became a situation where it seems you needed to make the call. How disruptive were they to the functioning of the town, to passage for traffic, economic activity, and linked to that, how much time or how much effort will it take to get back to a sense of normalcy and clear some of the backlogs?
No, I think our law enforcement, as well as Department of Transport, have worked tirelessly yesterday to ensure that all those disruptions are being cleared. And I can confirm that from yesterday evening, Thulasizwe, everything now, N2 was able to be accessible and people can continue with their destinations. And R56, it has reopened from yesterday. So they've worked tirelessly, and we must commend the work that has been done by the Department of Transport through their excavators that have been clearing the roads. We must thank and commend the work that has been done by the law enforcers within the Greater Kokstad Municipality, as well as our provincial and local disaster management centers that have been more proactive in terms of responding to the number of challenges. And particularly where in R56 there were people that were stuck, we were able to reopen those particular roads to allow them to reach their destinies. But I can say where there have trees that have fallen on the roads, we've been able to take them out and then reopen those particular roads. And also the power outage and network that has been affected because of heavy winds, we've been able to ensure with working with ESCOM and with our electrical department to restore that particular line. So everything from yesterday, as I'm saying, it has been a historic situation and the season that we have experienced as the district. But of course, working with all the law enforcers in a multidisciplinary team, we've been able to respond proactively and ensure that we save lives and there are no fatalities, no incidents that have been reported on the ground.
Yeah. So just lastly, Mayor, in terms of your own preparedness, do you believe that past incidents where the province of KwaZulu-Natal in particular had, for instance, when that snowfall, that blizzard occurred that affected the N3, there was a bit of a debate about its preparedness. Would you say that you had systems in place that, stood you in good stead and had you ready to be able to respond this time around, taking in past lessons?
No, definitely. Thulasizwe, you must remember that a government has got what is called early warning systems. And those early warning systems will be able to ensure that we are prepared for any kind of disasters that we're going to get. The messages have been carried out throughout with the provincial disaster management centers, the weather services. But what is important is that the issue of ignorance to our motorists, it's a growing concern each and every year when we experience this kind of inclement weather. But of course, the provincial teams as well as municipalities, I must commend them. We have always been ready to and be proactive in terms of ensuring that we deal with every kind of disaster that might happen. So we were quite ready, but the biggest challenge that we need to deal with is the issue of ignorance of our motorists who continue to travel, despite that messages have been carried out by the weather services as well as the provincial disaster management centers. So people need to adhere to those particular messages that have been carried out. Because we don't want to see any fatalities. We don't want to see any people incidents on the ground. But the road has been slippery. We've been able to clear out the ice that was on the road to ensure that people continue and reach their destination, and particularly those trucks that are part of the economic activity within the province as well as national. We need to ensure that those road closures have been reopened so that they can connect to those particular destinations.
All right, let's leave it there for this morning. Thank you for your time. That's the Mayor of Greater Kokstad Municipality. That's Luanda Matikizela.
As a business owner, I've noticed how being energy efficient has improved my savings and the growth of my business. You too can improve your margins by adopting energy efficient behaviors. Simply switch to energy saving lighting, switch off non-essential equipment, and maintain HVAC systems. These are some of the ways you can use electricity wisely to see your business soar as well as contribute to a greener planet. Just like every rand counts, every kilowatt counts. Let's use electricity wisely. Eskom.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matriek mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bakkie to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Hey Zai, good morning to you. Lungingiti, the return. Tell me about it.
Oh yeah, he's back. He's streaming. Lords, better brace for impact because our man is back. He's been named in the starting 11 for the World Test Championship final against Australia starting today, 11:30 a.m. Lungingiti will be leading the attack ahead of Dane Pedersen, while Ryan Rickleton joins Aidan Markram as a fresh-faced opening pair. Tony DeZorzi missing out. Vian Mulder slots in at number 3 with Keshav Maharaj, the only spinner. Captain Temba Bavuma says tough decisions had to be made.
From a tactical point of view, probably a little bit more pace from Lungi. Comes from, I guess he's taller as well. I think Lungs also has a good record, not taking away anything from Pato. He has the experience, he's played here before, not that Pato hasn't. But I think he will complement that bowling attack, I guess, a little bit more.
Bafana News, their coach Hugo Bruges calling himself a happy man after his youthful side beat Mozambique 2-0 at the Peter Mokaba Stadium last night. Kwaiba and substitute Cupido scored in the second half following a goalless draw against Tanzania last week, with several young players impressing. Coach admits his World Cup qualifier selection in September just got tougher.
Everything is positive.
And this is something that will make my job very difficult in the next months. We have 23 players there. You know that there are still maybe also 23 who are with their club, still with their club, or who are at home. So that makes that you can choose now in between 40 players. This will be difficult because you have to drop players in September. Players maybe who deserved it, but okay. I have to make choices.
Now, South Africa and defending champions Angola have booked their semi-final place at the COSAFA 2025 after a bumper 4 matches were played in Mangaung, Bloemfontein. South Africa's 0-0 draw with Mauritius enough to see them top Group A with a helping hand from Zimbabwe, while Angola defeated Malawi to finish top of Group B. Cycling news, Spain's Ivan Romero scored the biggest win of his career, claiming victory in Stage 3 of the Criterium du Dauphiné. The 21-year-old Movistar rider attacked the breakaway group 6 kilometers from the finish, marking his first World Tour win as Matthew van der Poel and others unable to catch him. Romero also took the lead in the general classification, moving ahead of Italy's Jonathan Milan, who finished 5 minutes and 46 seconds behind. And finally, surfing, the men's and women's world number ones, Jordy Smith of South Africa and Gabriela Bryan of Hawaii, cruised into the next round of the opening day of the World Surf League Trestles Pro in California. Two-time Trestles champion and current top-ranked men's surfer Jordy Thompson defeated the local boy Crosby Colapinto and the American wildcard Dimitri Poulos to reach the round of 16, while Gabriela Bryan overtook the local wildcard Kira Pinkerton and the 2024 World Junior Champion Luana Silva of Brazil in the women's opening round. Well, we'll be back with more. That's at the top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
I'm Anne Musa. Good morning. In the headlines, the Eastern Cape government has confirmed 11 people are missing following floods heavy rain caused in the province yesterday. The minibus in which those who are missing were travelling in was swept into a river. 3 police officers from the White River Flying Squad have been arrested while allegedly escorting a vehicle loaded with over 100 bags of dagga on the N4 toll road near Matsulu in Mpumalanga. And President Cyril Ramaphosa has appointed over 30 people to form the Eminent Persons Group that will guide the national dialogue. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Top story, south of Joburg, the R59. This is the Vaal to Joburg route. It remains closed this morning. Full closure between Randvaal Road and Klip River Road. And that's due to protesting that erupted early hours this morning, burning tyres and at least one truck on fire there as well. Very heavy, approaching the closures both ways, going to and from Vereeniging, and pretty heavily backed on the alternative local side road there. You've got the option of the R82 via Walkerville that comes into play as an open and alternative route. Staying in Joburg, N3. Straight view up to Heidelberg Road, looking fairly jam-packed this morning. The bike one from Boysons all the way up to Sandton. No gaps in that traffic, so that's pretty tight. And if you're on your way to Pretoria, again, the N14, Krugersdorp Highway, queuing up between the R55, Pretoria West exit and the N1 Brockfontein interchange. Durban's M7 really under some pressure this morning from Queensborough all the way to Pinetown, of course, to Stapleton Road. Closure, forcing, I guess, a lot more traffic onto that M7. Underwood Road is the other route that really backs up into Pinetown with the Stapleton Road being closed. So a lot of congestion around. Stapleton likely to be closed for about 3 weeks. Just an update on the snow around Coxstad. Everything is open with the exception of the 617. There are some snow issues between Underberg and Coxstad and just south of Kingscote, as we've been warning about slippery conditions. A truck has jackknifed across that 617. So you're not going to be able to get through there for some time. If you are going to have a look at the snow, please go as late as you possibly can. Cape Town, heavy pressure on the N1. A crash just after the R300 as you come into the Belleville area. Traffic parking all the way back to Kraaifontein. It's also causing big delays on the R300 coming up through Kales River to try and get into that N1. You're basically turning into the crash and into the delays. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning once again to Ndawling Lechela. And Ndawling, let's start in telecoms. Tell me about Telkom delivering a surge in profits.
That's right, Thulas, and this is on their bet on mobile, which is bearing fruit. That segment continues to perform well as it gains more subscribers. Mobile delivered a 10.2% jump in service revenue, fueled by an increase in data revenue of 12.3%. And this marks the second consecutive year of double-digit growth in mobile data revenue. Telkom's mobile subscriber base expanded by 13.4%, reaching 23.2 million subscribers, with prepaid subscriptions driving the growth. The company's mobile data subscribers increased by 19.5% to 15.2 million. Now, during the annual period, Telkom invested 2.8 billion rands in its mobile unit or business to support its growth and infrastructure needs. And looking at its overall performance, Telkom posted a 3.3% increase in revenue with a 91% surge in profit for the year at 2.8 billion rands. The solid underlying performance was supported by the sale of its masts and towers business, SwiftNet, and shareholders also gaining from that. They will be smiling all the way to the bank as the company declared a final dividend and a special dividend.
Yeah. In other company news, Ndawling, tell me about the Premier Group and them reporting positive results. You're saying this came despite the group having to contend with tough macroeconomic conditions.
That's right, Thulas. Now, Premier is the group that houses brands like Iwisa, Snowflake, and Blue Ribbon Bread, and they've weathered those tough trading conditions, delivering a 7% rise in revenue while posting earnings growth of close to 27%. The upbeat performance comes as it kept a tight lid on costs, as it had to contend with dynamics playing out in the soft commodities scene, monitoring both the wheat and maize price. The company's CEO, Kobus Gertenbach, says these conditions kept further revenue gains. Gertenbach added that the group operates in a competitive space, and so trying to make big gains from price increases was not an option. Over the annual period, the group saw inflation-linked price increases. Now, looking ahead, Premier expects moderate revenue growth in FY26, driven by declining maize input prices and subdued global wheat prices. The company anticipates passing through cost savings to consumers as maize prices soften by mid-2025. However, they've warned that local food inflation may be impacted by Eskom tariff hikes and failing water infrastructure mitigation.
Lastly, Ndawling, how are the markets looking at this hour?
So starting in Asia, markets in positive territory with investors picking up more riskier assets following the trade optimism. The Hong Kong Hang Seng leading the gains up close to 1% this morning. Then over in Wall Street, futures surprisingly turning red despite the optimism we've been seeing. Now, on that front, there seems to be some nervousness as traders eye the upcoming consumer inflation numbers. And then coming back home, sentiment pretty upbeat with the all-share closing 0.25% higher in yesterday's session. The rand, in the meantime, still trading stronger at 17.70 to the dollar this hour.
Right, Ndawling, thank you for that. We'll talk to you in the third hour of the show. Ndawling Lechela will be back just after 8:30, in which update, of course, as she always does, she will give you a sense of the kind of day you can expect in the markets on this Wednesday.
Welcome back to the sun-drenched shores of St. Marie, where the beaches are beautiful and the murders are mysterious. It's Death in Paradise Season 7. New cases, quirky suspects, and D.I. Jack Mooney, who's still figuring out the island and how to drink coconut water gracefully. Catch the show where paradise meets puzzling crime, because even in paradise, someone always has a secret. Death in Paradise Season 7, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. S3, open up.
13 Southern African nations and North African guests, Morocco, will battle it out for the ultimate glory in the Hollywood Bets COSAFA Cup 2025 in Mangaung, Bloemfontein. Catch the beautiful game on SABC Plus SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1 from 4 to 15 June. Stay tuned to SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
Let me take a few of your calls. Let me start with Sello in Mokopane. Good morning to you, Sello. You want to weigh in on the national dialogue, Imbizo. The president is calling us too.
Thank you for having me, Thulas. But
Sure.
like you said in the morning, we have a dialogue each and every day here on SAFM. Parliamentarians have their dialogues in Parliament almost every day also there. And what is amazing is, as until now, we don't know what is the problem South Africa. How can we solve them?
Yeah.
Is this country going to talk until when, Bratulas? I mean, it is government need to change certain laws. Government need to change their policy somewhere. And it is what they need to do. They do know what needs to be done, but they're not doing it. We have to sit down and talk. And I'm telling you now, after that dialogue, nothing is still going to change. Business people know what is wrong also in this country. They are listening to us now. ANC people that are here are listening. Councillors, mayors, all of them. But we still need to sit down and talk. Lastly, we talk about land appropriation of land. Last couple of years back, people raised concern about that. But what the decision that the government took, it was not for the people. So what? Why do we need to talk? And then after that, the government take their own decision, not what the majority wanted to us.
Silo, thank you for that. That's Silo in Mokopane. I suppose part of the value in the dialogue, I don't know, from where I sit, it may be that it's going to be structured and there's a deliberate effort to make it multi-sectoral, involving as many voices as possible, right? Which may not necessarily be the case in many of the conversations that we have on a daily basis. But I don't know. I also think that part of what motivates it, at least, is that 30 years have passed since we started on this journey of democracy. And sometimes you want to not only reflect your general positioning where you are right now, but generally your heading in terms of your direction, the longer term trajectory and your direction. I don't know. I think that's the motivation from what I understand. Let me take one voice note that has to do with the national dialogue before I come to you, Simpiwe, Crispin and Dean.
Good morning, Thulas. On the national convention that is coming in August, why did the president focus only on the formers? In particular, the trade union, I see the president only focus on the former COSATU General Secretary in Chali. Why did he not consider other presidents of other unions who are also in NETLEC? That's my question. Wello in Kimberley.
Yeah, that's a good question. I did see the list. It is quite extensive, multi-sectoral, but I don't know. I take the point you are making about including other unions and people who are not former, who are current. And I suppose those engagements will now happen with those people who are current, perhaps as the convention itself takes place and the processes related to it. But the point you are making, I fully take that. Let me then take it to Dean in Mbombela. Good morning to you, Dean. I take it you want to talk about problems in the country linked to this whole idea of a national dialogue.
Yes, look, recently we've heard about Cindy Somakaka, that he was killed. And then the reason why he was killed, it all stems from the tendering system. I don't know why, as South Africans, are we allowing this thing to persist. Let's please do things gradually. The first one, let's get rid of the tendering system. And then let this department that is called the public works, let it be the one that does all the public works. Let's do away with tenders firstly, foremost. Just focus on that one only, nothing else.
Yeah. So that's what you will raise then in the National Dialogue, Dean?
Raising it, I don't think it will help. It's something that we must do it. Now we don't have to raise anything. Now we need to do.
I hear you.
Raising, I think it has been raised ad nauseam.
Yeah, gotcha.
So now we need to do. Let's do away with tendering system. Let's not raise it. Let's just get rid of it.
Gotcha. That's Dean in Bombela. Let me move on to Crispin in Durban. Good morning to you, Crispin. Talk to me about the judge in the Senzo Meyiwa trial.
Morning to the CSW. I think the problem with the judge is that he's racializing something that can be thought about very differently. And I've been involved in a lot of mentoring, inevitably of mentoring of younger black people in particular. And the one asset that I had in that was not actually my great wisdom or anything like that. It was simply that I recognized that all of us, myself, the other person, have been shaped in some way. Our thinking has been constrained and shaped by the racist nonsense of the society, or the sexist nonsense of the society. And once you understand it, simply that's what race is really about, is just a kind of the constraints that come from the past. Once you understand that, then you say, okay, well, logically, any person should be making decisions as free as possible of that. So a lot of it was about simply reassuring people that the messages they'd got about themselves were nonsense, and that they shouldn't trouble themselves by worrying about it.
Yeah.
And then we need an attitude of ditching the stuff that got thrown at us, whether we're white or black, actually. So the question is, like, should advocates be there in that place? Should actually have nothing to do with race.
Yeah.
It simply is like, what is the best way of handling it? And we don't have to fall back on kind of racial ideas of some people being reliable and other people not being reliable, or whatever, or compassionate, whatever the stereotype is. So I think the enemy is the racial stereotypes and the way we've bought into them. And if we are free of that, then we can look at these issues without getting caught up in this is a black way of doing it or a white way of doing it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more, Crispin. Thank you for that. That's Crispin in Durban. It was an issue that had to do with, if you're calling out what you believe to be unprofessional conduct, call out that particular conduct. The lens, the racial reference is what people found to be problematic, and he has since apologized, has Judge Ratamo Kgwatleng. Of course, that apology itself is now being reflected upon, with some saying that some saying it's enough. Let's put the issue behind us. But certain segments, I think it was the Black Lawyers Association that said, actually, we hear the apology, but we would want to hear more from the judge. What informed that kind of thinking in the first place? Someone that I interact with, a colleague of mine, pointed out that there was more to it that I actually didn't pick up that preceded what we then saw when the judge made those comments about, is this South Africa run by blacks? Before then, there had been even utterances that were to the effect of him saying, when are we going to start respecting each other? The trial is watched by the public who see us behave in such a manner. They are watching us thinking we don't know what we are doing, especially our white counterparts. Then we complain when they say we can't run the country. Abelungu baphuza ngathi itiye because of the conduct in this court. So there was that then, that, the critique that says, why is this the standard you are holding yourself up to? Abelungu baphuza ngathi itiye. Why should we not be professional for the sake of professionalism, for the sake of the oath that legal practitioners take, for the sake of constitutional democracy, just because we are diligent people and conscientious people, and it's got nothing to do with a gaze that we believe is at play? Those are the questions that are starting to come up based on what Judge Ratamo Kgwatleng raised. Siyabonga Ntuli in Durban. Good morning. You want to weigh in on the National Dialogue?
Yes, good morning, and the listeners. Yes, definitely. Well, I think on my end I would raise three issues. One, the current political system is no longer gelling up with the upcoming youth and for the future. Number two, our international relations. I think South Africa needs to reposition itself. I think we're finding ourselves in conflict with a number of countries. Okay, we need to reposition on that. And then number three, the issue of security and unemployment, that gels with the economy and the political system at the moment. Thank you, Thulasizwe.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Siyabonga. It sounds like Siyabonga is ready for the national dialogue. He's got his points clearly mapped out, and hopefully many of us actually do take part and make our voices heard.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
A quick run through our top stories this morning on the traffic desk. The R59 between Joburg and the Vaal remains closed, protesting this morning, and at least a burning truck on that section of roadway. So it's a full closure between Heidelberg Road near Blockhouse Services and the Randvaal Road on the Meyeton side. A lot of congestion on the highway both ways into the closure, and a lot of congestion on the local alternative. The further afield alternative would be the R82 linking Vereeniging to Joburg via Walkerville and Southgate, and that route is pretty much open and flowing this morning. Certainly a lot better than getting caught up around the R59 closure. Roadworks on the R21 up towards Clayville, towards Olifantsfontein. It's quite heavy. A lot of traffic into Buccleuch, the N3 North and the N1 coming through from the Randburg side, very slow. And Bryanston dealing with the power outage this morning, so lots of traffic lights down on major routes like Sloane and Main and Winnie-Mandela and Grosvenor and Winnie-Mandela and Main. So lots of disruption through that area this morning. Down into the Kokstad snow region, most of the routes are open. There are some restrictions still on the 617 between Kokstad and Underberg, so you may want to travel later today or tomorrow. And a truck is jackknifed on those slippery roads just south of Kingscote, so some additional delays there. And then driving into Cape Town, heavy backlogs today on the N1. There's a crash just after the R300 in the Brackenfell area, pushing queues right back to Kraaifontein, Justenburg, and then behind that the R300 trying to get into the N1, queues back beyond the Van Riebeeck Road exit. And if you're driving through Somerset West, same deal as yesterday afternoon, hanging over this morning. No traffic lights. N2 at Onverwacht Road in the Nomzamo area. Quite heavy backlogs both ways. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mzansi, walala wasala. Play Lotto, Lotto Plus 1 and Lotto Plus 2 for a staggering 97 million rand in total estimated jackpots this Wednesday, and you could win big. Play Lotto for an estimated 70 million rand, Lotto Plus 1 for 16 million rand, and Lotto Plus 2 for 11 million rand today. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
Planet Earth, third planet from the sun. A cool place within the solar system where you can pause and take a deep breath without your lungs exploding. Home to an amazing array of wildlife and amazing landscapes that will leave you breathless either through wonder or fear. For humans, it's a place they call home, the only one that they have now. Team Surai follows a dedicated group of individuals dedicated to protecting the planet. Their mission: to encourage viewers to take concrete steps to protect the Earth. Catch Team Surai Thursdays at 6 p.m. S3, open up.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
It's coming up to 7 minutes to 8 here on SAFM. There's a thought-provoking piece that has been penned by renowned international affairs commentator Thembisa Fagute, in which the questions about systemic travel and migration strictures are raised, and that seem to be in place in the United States and European countries, and how they relate to Africans seeking to travel there. In it, Fagute argues that despite ongoing diplomatic, trade and educational partnerships between Africa and the West, Africans continue to face disproportionately high visa rejection rates from the United States and European countries. These rejections, often based on broad assumptions about applicants' intentions, those are increasingly seen as not only discriminatory, but damaging to Africa's socio-political and economic development. What does it all mean? Let's welcome Thembisa Fagute to unpack it for us. Thembisa, good morning. Thank you for your time. Before we get to the essence of what these visa rejections and the travel restrictions mean and their implications, you base your arguments on a number of data sets that talk about the number of rejections of visa applications by Africans and just how lucrative that whole visa application and rejection system is for countries that require Africans to have visas before they travel. Take me through the data. What does it reveal?
Well, the data reveals that these countries are actually making lots of money out of Africans. And my biggest problem with this visa rejection is not just the rejection and reasons given, is the fact that most of the funds or visa fees are not refundable, and very exorbitant amounts of money Africans have to go through, and they don't get their money back, which is a big problem. That's the first point. The second point is, at the moment, there are serious discussions that are taking place at various platforms internationally, particularly on rare earth minerals and other minerals that are key, particularly on AI business. Africans are invited to go and participate and contribute towards those discussions. And the fact that we get rejected as often as we do, these discussions are going on without us. And I foresee another set of policies that are going to be drafted on behalf of Africans, and are going to impact on Africans without Africans.
Is it your sense that there's an increasing rate of rejection of visa applications from Africans seeking to travel to countries in Europe and the United States? Hence your concern about the closing out of the African voice, particularly for those who are seeking a short-term visa to be able to attend a conference or some kind of a dialogue that will shape policies going forward.
Yes, I think it's deliberate. I think it's well planned. It's all about keeping the Africans out of these very, very important discussions that are taking place, whether it's about climate change, it's about the rare earth minerals that are becoming key and critical in the business of AI. But importantly, Africans are just continually exploited, and this money is continually extracted from Africans by these embassies, and it doesn't come back. And if you really do calculations, you will be surprised how much money has been collected from Africans in a form of visa fees that never get back to Africans. And Africans, most of them, have to go and make loans to fund the visa applications when they have to travel, but often are rejected, and that money doesn't come back. And I think it's unscrupulous. It's bad business for these countries, and I'm glad that there's some of the African leaders, particularly African leaders, who are now taking up this discussion. I hope it can be elevated into to the AU level.
So one of the figures you cite is that 30% of African visa applications were rejected in 2022, with countries like Algeria, Nigeria, Ghana, and Senegal topping the list. What do you say to the counter-argument that says perhaps it's the experience of those countries such as the United Kingdom, the United States, and others, that in many instances the likelihood of someone coming from some of these countries where many of these rejections come from, the likelihood of that person overstaying their visa and becoming an illegal migrant in those countries, statistically, they've found that, there's a high likelihood of that happening.
Yeah, that's probably true, and it does happen all the time. But the most important issue here is two issues. One is there are Africans that are invited by legitimate institutions, and those institutions provide guarantees that these Africans are invited, and they will certainly be going back. Some of them, or most of them, work for important NGOs and government institutions who are supposed to be representing Africa discussions at various platforms in Europe, particularly. They are rejected. They don't go. I mean, these are people who are not going to be going and overstaying their their visa allocation time, they have to come back and do the business and work in Africa. So I'm not talking about the rest, and I do agree with you that there are a lot of Africans, hence, for example, those that are risking crossing the dangerous waters into Europe, because Africans do believe that there are opportunities in Europe. But these particular group of individuals who are key in terms of these discussions are rejected. One. Two is, okay, give us the money back if you're not going to, at least a percentage of it. This has been happening for years. And the money is not coming back. And all that we see these embassies getting wealthy through African visa applications.
So these high rates of rejection of visa applications by Africans to these countries juxtaposes against a situation where many African countries have had free access for, many countries, European countries, travelers from European countries and the United States. You are saying you are seeing a trend where some African countries are starting to respond in kind. Recently, we saw what Idris Deby of Chad said when that announcement was made by Donald Trump that he was imposing a travel ban on several countries, including Chad. So is that a welcome development, that there's starting to be that conversation that says we are also not going to make it easy for you to come to our countries?
I think so. I think it's very important. The reciprocation of what the European countries are doing by Africans is very important, because it will certainly send a message. But we need to remember something, Thulas, is that, in 1945, 46, when the United Nations gathered in all these countries who were in proximity to New York and other places, met and in Geneva and other places, Africans were not there. They were still traveling, trying to get to Geneva and New York and other places where decisions were made. And by the time they reached there, the discussions were over. And now we have to deal with the United Nations that did not take into consideration our contribution. And I'm afraid this time around what will happen is as these new discussions are taking place, particularly on mining rights and others and environmental degradation policies, etc., are happening, we're not there. And this time it's deliberate. And again, we're going to be facing another century of Africans dealing with policies that were decided on their behalf without their contribution. So this is extremely important for me to have these Africans getting involved.
All right, Tembisa, thank you for that. You've gotten us thinking. That's Tembisa Fagute, who is Director at Africa-Asia Dialogues and also a global governance analyst. And that brings us to 8:01. Let's check in with N. Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, 11 people missing following floods in the Eastern Cape, and US condemns sanctions imposed on Israeli cabinet ministers. Good morning. The Eastern Cape government has confirmed 11 people are missing following floods heavy rain caused in the province yesterday. The minibus in which those who are missing were travelling in was swept into a river in the Mtata area. Most of them are believed to be learners. The death toll stands at 9. Provincial government spokesperson Kuselwa Ranki.
In the Arfrenzo area, just outside Kokstad, that were trapped in the snow, and farmers in that area were able to assist and ensure that those people are able to at least to be in a safe environment. And also in the Buckley area, people that were trapped in the snow in that area were rescued. And that was the only pass in our province as of late last night that was still very much closed, and we will assess the situation again this morning.
3 police officers from the White River Flying Squad have been arrested while allegedly escorting a vehicle loaded with over 100 bags of dagga on the N4 toll road near Matsulu in Mpumalanga. Provincial Police spokesperson Jabu Ndubane says the officers were on duty and in full uniform when they were arrested. She says the occupants of the vehicle in which the drugs were found were also arrested. They were charged with dealing in dagga.
The 3 police officers, age ranges between 32 and 49, were arrested after they were alleged escorting a vehicle trafficking dagga along the N4 route near Matsuluti Junction. The 3 officers were driving a marked police vehicle in full uniforms while on duty, and they were escorting a vehicle carrying 107 bags loaded with dagga. Members of Matsulu have responded after they received intelligent information about the dodgy activities, and they cornered the 3 officers. They are facing charges in relation to corrupt activities and defeating ends of justice.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has appointed over 30 people to form the Eminent Persons Group that will guide the national dialogue. They include former Independent Electoral Commission Chairperson Pragalia Bam, former Constitutional Court Justice Edwin Cameron, Banyana coach Desiree Ellis, Springbok captain Siya Kolisi, and former MP Lindiwe Mazibuko. Ramaphosa made the announcement yesterday. He says the group reflects South Africa's diversity as well as a proven commitment to the advancement of social cohesion and nation building.
Through the national dialogue, we seek a shared vision of what it means to be a South African and develop a new national ethos and common value system. It is an opportunity to forge a new social compact for the development of our country, a compact that will unite all South Africans with clear responsibilities for different stakeholders, government, business, labor, civil society, men and women, communities and citizens.
Johannesburg Mayor Dada Morero says fear of progress has motivated those who are behind the planned motion of no confidence in him. This follows his establishment of the city's bomb squad last week. The unit comprises of individuals with different skills, tasked with guiding the city from the current decay to world-class status in the next 2 years. At the heart of the DA's dissatisfaction is what it believes is the unlawfulness of the establishment of the unit. However, Morero says he's not afraid of the planned action, as his administration is turning the tide on the city's challenges.
I think they're more afraid that we are doing something and we are going to turn around the city. Our budget is fully funded, so they've realized that. 2, it's one of the biggest budgets ever. We have actually invested a lot in infrastructure in our budget to turn around the infrastructure. We have the support of the provincial government and national government through the district development model. And generally we have now repositioned the city even in international platforms where we have been recognized, we have been celebrated.
And finally, the US has condemned the sanctions several Western allied governments have imposed on 2 Israeli cabinet ministers for inciting violence in the West Bank. The countries are the UK, Norway, Australia, New Zealand and Canada. The sanctions, including travel bans and asset freezes, are against Israel's National Security Minister and the Finance Minister. Showan Bryce Peace reports.
A statement by Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, condemned the sanctions imposed on the 2 sitting cabinet ministers, saying it did not advance U.S.-led efforts to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza, bring all the hostages home and end the war. Rubio said they rejected any notion of equivalence and that Hamas was a terrorist organization that committed unspeakable atrocities. He said he wanted to remind their partners not to forget who the real enemy was and urged the reversal of the decision, while saying the US stood shoulder to shoulder with Israel. The 5 nations earlier said they had engaged with the Israeli government extensively on the issue, yet settler violence continued with encouragement and impunity.
Recapping the top story, the Eastern Cape government has confirmed 11 people are missing following floods heavy rain caused in the province yesterday. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Breaking news just in. Pinky, a 60-year-old woman, slashed 870 Rand a month of her car insurance premium. That's right. Pinky switched to Outsurance and now saves a mind-blowing 870 Rand a month on her 2020 Kia Seltos 1.6. Outsurance clients always get something out. Get a quote today and see how much Outsurance could save you on your car insurance. Call 08600 60,000 or visit outsurance.co.za. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
It's a very good morning to you in your SFM sports headlines. Cricket, as South Africa's captain Themba Bavuma says they're ready to take control of the World Test Championship final against Australia. That's happening later today. And we'll also bring you news with South Africa as well as the Bulls. They're looking forward to the United Rugby Championship final against Leinster. Details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning, south of Joburg, R59, still closed, full closure, both directions going in and out of the Vaal area. It's shut between Heidelberg Road and Randvaal Road due to protesting this morning. Heavy pressures in that area. Move across, use the R82 as the alternative. Power supply problems in Bryanston, so a lot of major route traffic lights offline this morning. At the R21 North, the roadworks moving up towards Olifantsfontein, causing some extra delays passing Tembisa. 617 north of Kokstad remains restricted. If you're on that Kokstad-Underberg option this morning, leave it as late as you possibly can, please. Durban side, a crash between Kloof and Hillcrest on the M13 going down towards Old Main, causing delays. Crash on the N2 before Komarshu Highway, backlogging traffic through from the Umhlanga side. And Cape Town, the M5, very slow at De Waal Road this morning. That's in the Southfield area. And a crash on the N1 inbound after the R300. That's a heavy queue extending right back to Justenburg and pushing a queue on the R300 north back as far as Van Riebeek Road. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The reigning champions Banyana Banyana and 11 African national teams are ready to tackle each other for WAFCON 2024 to determine who are the real queens of the continent. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Experience the Women Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024 from 5 to 26 July 2025. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC 1 and SABC 2. Also available on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
A bowl of cereal, a glass of orange juice, some flavored yogurt for breakfast. Ultra-processed products such as these may be high in sugar, salt, or saturated fat. Having too much of these products could lead to diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease. Our health is in danger. We have the right to know what's in our food. Demand front of package warning labels. Now, sign the petition on heala.org. HEALA.org.
What if you open your night to culture? Try new things and make space for new voices, new stories, and new perspectives. Open up your Saturday night with world-class entertainment, reality TV, and drama from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Good morning, folks. We are into the third hour of the morning brief on this Wednesday. I see a lot of your calls lining up, and I also note the voice notes you've been sending, and I want to squeeze in as many of them as possible. But I do need to mention something that's sort of disturbing me. In the midst of a crisis, clear, concise, and unambiguous communication is critical. It's key. We need to be getting a clear sense as the crisis unfolds from an authoritative point of view where, the last figures checked by the rescue workers are the figures we can take to the bank, at least for now, until you come back as the people leading the response to a disaster to tell us that since our last update, the situation has changed. That's what we got used to when we were dealing with COVID-19, that were official figures that people would come and report and say, this is what is happening. So there's something disturbing about the figures coming through from the Eastern Cape about, what the situation is on the ground that we're dealing with. A source highly placed in that area affected by the flooding has reached out and basically just told me that in the conversation we had with Phelo Oliphant of the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Department, there was that report that said, the 13 children who were in scholar transport that was swept away yesterday near Efata school, that they were rescued. That was the report from Phelo Oliphant, and I remember expressing that relief. Well, this source is suggesting that this is not true, saying that only 3 were rescued alive. The rest are still missing. And the rescue operations were set to begin, this message came in about half an hour ago. The rescue effort was set to begin in a few minutes before then. This is a highly placed person that I'm talking to, that is revealing this information. It just talks to also the issues around the number of people that have been affected. When you don't communicate clearly, at a certain level, it just talks to you not really understanding what the situation is. Clear, concise, unambiguous communication. So hopefully someone who is responsive enough in the Eastern Cape, Epondweni, will reach out and speak to me before the show is up to say what exactly is the situation. Give clarity so there's no room for speculation, no room for fake news and confusion. Having said that, let me take some of your calls. Pat in Katlehong, good morning. You want to talk to me about the National Dialogue? Pat in Katlehong, are you there? Pat, can you hear me? Waban.
Hello.
Yeah, I was about to move on, Pat. I was about to move on. Good, you held on for so long, and now you've gone AWOL on me. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, in fact, my comment has to do with the National Dialogue. Yeah, in fact, I'm worried about the sovereignty of other countries like Zimbabwe and Lesotho, because the country maybe will be discussing the next 30 years of our democracy. So I don't think it will be fine after the National Dialogue. We still have countries which can't manage their sovereignty properly, because this will always have an impact on our society anyway. And it will impede development in the whole region. I don't know if that is far-fetched in terms of this National Dialogue.
No, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense when and I suppose you will be taking part in the National Dialogue, right, through whatever avenues are availed, and you'll be raising those points sharply? All right, all right, Pat, we have a bit of a difficulty with your line, but we got the point that you were making. Mishak in Emalahleni, good morning. Also on the National Dialogue?
Yeah, morning, Thulas. Thulas, I just want to mention that, I hear in the National Dialogue they are talking about the challenges facing the country. I want to put something very clear here. You see, that when we talk about the word challenges are the situations presented by nature. For example, floods, rain, too much dust and wind that can prevent the economic activities. Problems are the one created by human beings. In this regard, the problem of corruption has been created by corrupt African National Congress. ANC has destroyed this country. Let's not beat about the bush. And the issue that Justice Ratamkhwatlhe said was very true, that black people, certain sectors of black people have destroyed this country through corruption. Your Jacob Zuma, Kwete Mantase, Nombula Mukonyane, Pule Madi, and the others in the ANC. The biggest threat for South African stability, administration, and economy and finance is corrupt African National Congress. So this National Dialogue, in actuality, we don't need ANC or the government next to it. It should be led by a foundation like Ahmed Kathrada, Archbishop Desmond Tutu Foundation, FW de Klerk Foundation, and the others, not the government, because ANC people in the government are going to manipulate the whole situation in the National Dialogue.
All right, Mishak, thank you for that. That's Mishak in Emalahleni talking to, I suppose, the sense of lost trust and faith, particularly in politics, and the politics in particular from what you're hearing there of the African National Congress. Let me speak to Letlogonolo in Qwaqwa. Good morning. You want to weigh in on what Judge Rata Mokgwatleng has had to say and the subsequent apology?
Yes, morning, Thulasizwe.
Morning.
Morning to the listeners. Yes, I want to speak about the issue of the judge. Moreover, I want to speak about how Miss. Yesterday I was listening to SAFM and the way Miss KG Mwekezi handled it. I felt she did injustice, because the way, as a broadcaster, she mustn't put her side. I think she was biased, because from the initial point, it was clear that she is biased on the judge, and the way she did it, she must not do it.
All right.
She must put. Yes, sir.
Hold on a second. I want to engage you properly, and I'm willing to ask the team, because this comes up quite a lot. I'm willing to ask the team to give you as much time as possible. Now, when you say KG Mwekezi should not have put her side to it, how does a dialogue work? Because what KG does is not journalism, right? It's not he said, she says. It is a dialogue. So when you say something, Lehlohonolo, the point about it is that I call it stress testing your ideas. You may, I don't know what you're going to say about Judge Mokgwatleng, but when you say it, I need to stress test your ideas. You need to convince me, sitting in this chair, representing someone else who's listening, who holds a different view to yours. So her putting a side to this, what's wrong with that? What makes a dialogue? A dialogue doesn't mean you and I will always agree.
What I'm saying to Leslie is she must put the judge apologized.
Yes.
And all those things. But she must not be biased. She must not put her side to be clear that she is against everything that the judge did. She must just put the dialogue so that we as listeners should weigh in, even if we hold different views, which is very, very healthy for us to do. But her as a broadcaster is to just be an umpire or a referee, not necessarily be putting her, because
but
you will find that.
Sorry, Mr. Honolo, let me come in again. But the role of a talk show host, is partly that, to be opinionated. It is in the nature of the format. You are opinionated and you put your opinions across. You are honest and open with the listener, such that they know what they are getting. So I think we need to adapt to that and accept it. Sometimes you will not agree with KG, sometimes you will not agree with me, and that's perfectly fine. That's the nature of dialogue.
Okay, I'm closing. I understand that.
Yes.
She did it even on the DA issue, on the issue of zeal. She's always doing it. I remember there was one instance where a certain white gentleman rebuked her. So it is always the case. She must put, I think, I don't know, Thulasizwe and the listeners, but I'm sure some will understand where I'm going.
Yeah, no, I hear you, Mr. Honor. I've heard you. Thank you for that, and thank you for engaging me. Please don't stop engaging, even with KG, even when you don't agree with her.
Yes, even when I don't agree.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love her. I love you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lesogololo. We love you too. That's Lesogololo in Kwakwa there.
Mzansi, walala wasala. Play Lotto Plus 1 and Lotto Plus 2 for a staggering 97 million rand in total estimated jackpots this Wednesday, and you could win big. Play Lotto for an estimated 70 million rand, Lotto Plus 1 for 16 million rand, and Lotto Plus 2 for 11 million rand today. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
All right, let's reflect on this now. As the country marks Youth Month, we are called upon to reflect not just on the legacy of the 1976 student uprising, but on the current state of youth development. The youth unemployment rate stands at a devastating 62.4%, which some commentators say exposes the painful truth of an education system that is not equipping young people with the skills, mindsets, and opportunities needed to thrive in the modern economy. Let's get the views now of Setlohane Manchidi, who is head of CSI at Investec. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. Let's start perhaps with a SWOT analysis of the education system, the content of the education system versus the modern economy and the skills and mindsets that are needed. What is your reading and overall assessment of that?
Morning, Thulasizwe, and thank you so much for this opportunity to have a discussion and engagement on a very important issue. I mean, I think, Thulasizwe, the very first thing that we really must talk to is an education system, particularly basic education system, that is seriously challenged. Firstly, the majority of our learners are not taking maths and science, which are considered gateway subjects. I mean, they really open up for people to become engineers, doctors, chartered accountants, actuarial scientists. The majority are not. In fact, many are encouraged to do maths literacy. That really does not get them into the spaces that you'd really like to see many of them. But also, in a digitally fast transforming society, there's very little tech-related education in our basic education system. In fact, it remains inaccessible, let alone even mere exposure for the majority of learners in this country. Tech is not either than the phones that they're exposed to, but tech education in our school curriculum is just about absent. The other is really to say that career guidance or related education is also just about absent in our education system. Sure. And we really need to rethink the so-called life orientation subject, because it was meant, and partly for many other life skills consideration, one of which would have been career guidance. The other piece, which I think ties to why we haven't got a high number of learners taking maths and science, is the rote learning for regurgitation instead of critical thinking and a questioning approach to learning and discovery of knowledge. And that really is indeed a challenge.
So a lot of what you've said, Setlogane, is something that I've heard time and again in analyzing and diagnosing what ails our education system. What role is there for other sectors then, if we're not pointing just at government and saying these are the curriculum failures, this is where you are failing? What role is there for other sectors in society to plug in and stand in the gap? And is that happening enough?
I mean, I always say I appreciate the NGO sector. We have a saturation of NGOs, some of which are very active and clear on what they do. But it's the first line of defense in many instances. We work in partnership with many NGOs that operate in the education system, either in the space of the provision of career guidance education, or actually even in the learner support in relation to maths and science, or even in the the development of a new breed of educators in the maths and science education. So there are lots of those, and there are even many that are mushrooming, that are focused on tech exposure, coding, this or the other. So there are lots of these, and I think it's happening, but it's not happening as it should, because what we really need to get to is for government to see many of these role players as the creators of capacity to do that which the government can't do. And that then will take it to scale. So that it is happening, but it's happening at a limited scale. So I mean, if I take one of our programs that we support, which is Promise, which we have supported for the last 20 years, it sees 5,000 kids go through the system with us every year. But that is 5,000 of 250,000 kids who sit and register for mathematics at the end of matric. So it's a drop in the ocean. Clearly, what ought to happen is if an entity such as government could say, if you on your own can see through between 5 and 10,000, I will match you rand for rand so that you double the number, because this is how you create extra capacity. So it is happening, and I must commend those who are strategic enough and intentional enough in making a difference in society. But it has to happen at a much bigger scale than it currently is.
All right. Thank you, Setlogane Manchidi, who is head of CSI at Investec. The national dialogue is very much on, even on these aspects.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning to you, Zai. So the Proteas are at Lords, are they?
Oh, yes.
At
Lords.
Yeah.
Lords will be turning green and gold today. And we're looking forward to seeing the likes of Kagiso Rabada, Lungi Ngidi. They've been named in the starting 11 for this World Test Championship final against Australia. First ball being bowled at 11:30. And we can see Ryan Rickleton will join Aiden Markram as a fresh-faced opening pair. Vian Mulder slots in at number 3. Keshav Maharaj, the only spinner. Captain Themba Bavuma says the team is ready.
I think now it's maybe just getting down to the fact that we actually need to play the game. Let's play what is in front of us. Let's not get caught up into too much of the story and what could be, and just be ready for what's to come.
More cricket. Proteas captain Laura Wolfart says they're aware of their West Indies counterparts' poor recent series in England, and that's why they need to approach with extra caution ahead of their ODI series starting today. It will be a special moment for experienced all-rounder Marizanne Kapp. When she walks out at the Oval, she will represent South Africa for the 150th time in ODI cricket. Former captain Mignon du Preez is the only other player to have achieved the feat, and Wolfer says the team will make it memorable.
I think knowing Kappie, she'll probably not want to make it a thing. She's quite humble in the way that she plays and doesn't really look at milestones like that. But I'm sure when she takes the field for 150th, we'll try and make it a big deal and make sure it's a special moment for her. Obviously, playing that many games for your country is something super special and deserves to be recognised, even though she may not want to admit it.
And we also got Bafana coach Hugo Bruges calling himself a happy man after his youthful side. They beat Mozambique 2-0 at the Peter Mokaba Stadium last night. Now the Bulls, they are ready to face the heavyweights Leinster. That's in the United Rugby Championship final this Saturday at Dublin's Croke Park. Leinster power past Glasgow, while the Bulls, they secured their spot by winning against the Sharks. And the Bulls coach Jake White says it's the third final in 4 years that his side has learned from past disappointments, readying themselves for the physical showdown. And finally, men's and women's world number 1 surfers Jordie Smith of South Africa and Gabriella Bryan of Hawaii have cruised into the next round on the opening day of the World Surf League Trestles Pro, and that's taking place in California. And that's a wrap of your morning sport. We've got John Gericke. He'll be surfing the airwaves at 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, results of a study Nedbank and the National Association of Automotive Component and Allied Manufacturers have released has highlighted challenges local manufacturers are facing. They include pressure to shift to low-carbon operations or risk losing their competitiveness. Eastern Cape Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs MEC Zolile Williams has attributed the disaster in Mthatha to non-adherence to municipal zoning and building regulations. 9 people have died following floods that heavy rain caused in the province yesterday. And Johannesburg Mayor Dada Morero says fear of progress has motivated those who are behind the planned motion of no confidence in him. This follows his establishment of the city's bomb squad last week. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Latest on the R59 between Meyeton and Joburg. The road looks like it's been reopened northbound but still closed southbound. So it looks like you can come off the Vaal and make your way through that area, although it is slow. Southbound, there's still a big queue into the Heidelberg Road, the 550 junction, and then some very heavy traffic on that local alternative that basically runs alongside the R59. So open north to Joburg, closed going south onto the Vaal. Breakdown after Winnie Mandela on the M1 North. That's heavy from Randburg. Mike 1's got plenty of traffic. Boyston through to Parktown, then Melrose up to Sandton. Absolutely jam-packed this morning. R21 North, very heavy passing Tembisa into the roadworks, which have moved closer to Olifantsfontein Road today. And a crash on the mighty Mopani Highway heading into Pretoria by Bremer Street. That's heavy through Theo Martins. Crash on the N14 at Eupheus Road, causing delays getting up into Pretoria as well. Just outside Durban, Kloof to Hillcrest remains heavy. The M13 approaching Hillcrest. That's due to a crash near Old Main Road. A reminder to go as late as you possibly can if If you need go down and look at that snow in the Coxstad area. Still plenty of snow, slippery conditions likely with the big chill through that area. The Barclay Pass, R58, still closed. There's some very thick snow on that pass. We have put a picture up on our x.com feed, our X feed at Traffic SA. You can have a look. It will take a while for the Barclay Pass to be cleared up. And Cape Town this morning, the earlier crash on the M1 inbound at Old Oak Road's being cleared, but it's left some very heavy traffic from Justenburg, making your way inbound through towards sort of Brackenfell territory. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning once again to Ndauling Lechela. Ndauling, more bad news. The manufacturing sector, manufacturing production, you're telling us this morning it continues its downward spiral.
That's right, Thulas. Now, this industry really continuing to struggle, reporting its largest decline in over a year. Now, this is the fourth consecutive contraction in production. We've been seeing contraction since January, since January actually, until now. The declines were led by the following divisions: food and beverages, basic iron and steel, and motor vehicles. On a year-on-year basis, Stats SA recorded that production fell 6.3%. The downturn was broad-based, with 7 out of 10 divisions reporting negative growth during the period. Sales also declined, falling 0.7% on a month-on-month basis in April. Now, analysts are concerned about the downturn we are seeing in the sector, as it accounts for around 13% of the country's GDP. And the downbeat showing was evident in the first quarter GDP print, as the industry was one of the largest negative contributors to growth. And as we kick off the second quarter, analysts are concerned about this, saying that it could possibly be an indicator that the sector could contribute negatively as well to the second quarter. Economist at FNB Tanda Sitole also mentioned that the print aligns with what we've been seeing in the ABSA PMI and expects the sector's performance to remain subdued.
Sure, this is concerning, Ndauling. It feels now that something has got to give. This is fast becoming one of those situations that the president would describe as a burning platform. Hopefully
That's
something, hopefully something comes through from that. In other news, tell me about building confidence. You're saying that it also ticked lower in quarter two.
Exactly, Thulas. And this also seen when we look at that GDP print. We saw the construction sector continuing to struggle and contributing negatively to growth. And according to the FNB BER Building Confidence Index, morale declined to 36 points in the second quarter from 41 points in the first, with almost 65% of respondents expressing dissatisfaction with current business conditions. Now, just a reminder that the index measures the level of confidence in the building sector across various stages of construction processes. It looks at morale among contractors, hardware retailers, as well as quantity surveyors. Now, the downturn in Q2 is due to weaker residential building activity, while non-residential building remains relatively resilient. The main contractor's confidence fell to 35, the lowest since the third quarter of 2022, and this was driven by decreased activity and worsening sentiment in the residential sector. In contrast, though, quantity surveyors' sentiment rose to 50. This is its best level since the second quarter of 2017. The residential building sector, as I said, faces pressure with a decline of 8.4% in real spending on residential buildings. Now, Siphamandla Mkhwanazi, who is a senior economist at FNB, notes that respondents reported a deterioration in activity and overall profitability, with a decline also being seen in order books, pointing to continued strain in activity in the short term. Despite the outlook, though, despite this print, the outlook seems to be improving, driven by momentum in non-residential projects.
All right, Ndauling, given everything you've told us this morning, what kind of a day can we expect in the markets today?
Now, while we are seeing some downbeat economic prints locally, sentiment is still being fueled by the optimism we've been seeing over in the global scene. That, of course, on the back of the trade truce we saw coming through. And so we are likely to see a positive showing from the JSE as sentiment continues to improve. Not much happening here at home today in terms of company news, so all eyes will be on global developments, with the US inflation print most likely to be the next market moving catalyst. Meanwhile, in currency markets, the rand is trading even stronger, and this despite these dollar stabilizing. It's near a 8-month high at 17.68 to the greenback this hour. Stateside, futures in the red as investors assess the kind of impact tariffs will likely have on inflation. Ahead of that print, as mentioned, it seems like investors are slightly concerned. And then lastly, over in Asia, it's green screens as optimism over a trade truce between China and the US continues to boost sentiment.
Right on the money as always. That's our Ntaoleng Lechela. Thank you for that, Ntaoleng. She's kept you updated on business, economics and the markets throughout the course of the show this morning.
Is there ever a bad time for a good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Right. Earlier on, I raised that concern about clarity of communication in a crisis in relation to the flooding in the Eastern Cape, which has taken, as you know, a tragic turn, with several people confirmed to have died in that flooding that happened yesterday. And the conflicting information, we had the spokesperson of the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs in the Eastern Cape, Pelo Oliphant, who gave an update about a vehicle, a scholar transport vehicle that was said to have been swept away by flood waters, and said that those children had been rescued and found alive, only to get an update from a source highly placed in the Eastern Cape that says actually only 3 had been rescued. The rest, the search was about to resume. So I called for clarity and responsiveness, and I'm glad to say that the Premier of the province, Oscar Mabuyane, has come through with that responsiveness. Premier, good morning. Thank you for your time. So just clarity then. I think let's start with that story that has become contentious one way or another. What's the status of this vehicle, scholar transport vehicle that was ferrying children that we are told was swept away near Efata School in Mthatha? Has there been a rescue of the children, or are we still in that process?
Good morning, Thulasizwe, and good morning to listeners. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Apologies, I'm on the road traveling towards Mthatha. A bit of a challenge of network there. The correctness information is that yes, we had this 21-seater which was swept away by flooding bridge yesterday morning, which was carrying kids to the school. What we have been trying to figure out is the exact number of kids that were in the car as the car was collecting kids on the way along to school. Where it picked up the first group, it normally picks about 15, but it looks like that was not the 15, it was not all kids going to school yesterday. Confirmed that we still have missing bodies that were in the car. Our estimation is that not less than people who would have been in that car, including the driver, whom I've just been reliably informed this morning that the driver, an old man, was driving the bus.
Premier, the network is letting us down, and I think I will ask you to then repeat because we were hearing you intermittently. So, all right, I think let's try and call the Premier back and see if we can get a better line, because I think this is crucial information that the Premier is giving us with regard to that search for that vehicle, the scholar transport vehicle that was swept away by flood waters. It does seem that there's a bit more detail that the Premier is communicating in between the breakages in the network. I could hear that there's actually a bit more information that we might want to hear from the Premier. It does sound like they continue with the search for other occupants of that vehicle. But as you can hear, the Premier is traveling. He is dealing with a crisis situation, and therefore that is understandable that he would be, trying to reach remote areas of the province in response to the crisis that has been playing itself out in the Eastern Cape with flooding. Let me take a quick break and see if we can get Premier Oscar Mabuyane back on a better line.
The reigning champions Banyana Banyana and 11 African national teams are ready to tackle each other for WAFCON 2024 to determine who are the real queens of the continent. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Experience the Women Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024 from 5 to 26 July 2025. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC 1 and SABC 2. Also available on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
We're extending the sunshine on Mzansi's favorite adventure SUV with Ford Blue Sky offers. For just $849,999, a new Everest XLT could be yours. Glide through the burbs or power through nature's toughest with a 3.5-ton brake towing capacity. You'll even get 4x4 driver training through Ford Family Promise for free. Head to a Ford dealer and get your new Everest XLT for just $849,999. T&Cs apply.
Welcome back to the sun-drenched shores of St. Marie, where the beaches are beautiful and the murders are mysterious. It's Death in Paradise Season 7. New cases, quirky suspects, and D.I. Jack Mooney, who's still figuring out the island and how to drink coconut water gracefully. Catch the show where paradise meets puzzling crime, because even in paradise, someone always has a secret. Death in Paradise Season 7, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. S3, open up.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
All right, we seem to be battling with getting a connection back to Premier Oscar Mabuyane. We'll see what we can do because it is crucial, as I said, and I don't want to belabor the point. So if we can connect with him before the show is up, we will prioritize that and try and take him because, as I said, it did seem as if there's a bit more that we need to know about that situation involving a scholar transport vehicle that was ferrying children and was swept away in flood waters and the search and rescue operation that then ensued. So we'll see if we can come back to that. In the meantime, let me take one or two of your voice notes. Let me take this one. It has to do with crimes committed by members of the South African Police Service.
Good morning, Thulas. You see, this thing of the law enforcement escorting illegal things in our country is too much. You go to Beitbridge, what a post in Messina, it's too much there because you will see them, especially the highway patrollers. You will see them escorting these illegal cigarette guys in our country. Because they are the highway patrollers, you will think they are doing good things for our people, but they are the ones who are doing the worst things in our country. So it's very painful to witness this kind of things. It's very, very painful. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I saw that story out of Mpumalanga, the goal to have police officers in marked police vehicles escorting a vehicle that was transporting marijuana. I think some 100 bags or something. Just utterly shocking. It just talks to the sense that people believe they can get away with things that they engage in. Let me try once again with Premier Oscar Mabuyane. Premier, let's see if we've got you on a better line. You were clarifying what the status of this search and rescue operation around the scholar transport vehicle is. Have we found the children and we've found them alive, or are we still searching for more children?
Morning, Thulasizwe. Once again, my sincere apologies. Yes.
No. Premier, we tried. I'm terribly sorry. Let's talk. Maybe you can talk to the next show. I'm pretty sure the team on the Talking Point will gladly take a call from Premier Oscar Mabuyane and get this clarified. I see them giving me the thumbs up. So definitely do listen out. Once the Premier is in a better spot with better network coverage, it is crucial information in a time of crisis. Listen out for that in the update during the Talking Point here on SAFM.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
So earlier on, we started the show by giving you an update about a new variant of COVID-19. The World Health Organization, as well as our Minister of Health, are saying don't panic about it. The risk to public health is assessed as low, but of course it is spreading, particularly in the US, and in fact to some 22 countries. Let's hear what this person has to say about that.
Mr. Simelane, good morning to you and your listeners. It's Vele Mdluli of Richards Bay. These politicians and these doctors or medical practitioners, what are they saying now about this new variant or this COVID-19 is nothing new compared to what they have said before. They're just going to repeat the same thing. Everything that's going to happen next is exactly what happened before. As what they're going to say now is exactly what they've said before. But we still had the virus of COVID-19 killing our people. I thank you.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And in a way, that consistency in messaging is good, right? Is it not? They've always said, have the scientists, that we will continue to have COVID circulating in our populations and in our communities. It becomes an issue of severity as well as that immunity that is built up over a period of time, including the interventions such as vaccination, etc., such that it becomes something that, continues to coexist with us in our populations. And I think that is the message that is being driven by the World Health Organization when they say, don't be concerned too much about this new variant. What's this now? Who wants to talk about driver licenses? Is it that situation once again? Are we back there with the one driver license card printing machine?
Morning, Thulas. This issue of driver's licenses. Thulas, some of us applied for driver's licenses in February. Yesterday I went to the testing center and they told me that there's still no licenses that are available. There's a backlog. So can you find out from the Department of Transport how long will it take for the driver's licenses to start being printed again? Because it's ridiculous what we are going through. I mean, right now you're sitting with an expired license and they can't even give you an answer when you should come back. I asked the guy, should I come back after a month or two? The guy just said, I'd come back after 3 months. So it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Eddie from Bulugwa.
Eddie, thank you for that. It's that question, right? How long is a piece of string? Really is what we're dealing with in terms of how long we're going to have to wait until the situation is finalized and sorted out. And it's a recurring problem, right? You wonder at what point will people such as the Minister of Transport be finally fed up and say, actually, I want a solution and I want a solution yesterday. Of course, in all of that, no one is asking for a bypassing of procedures that need to be followed. But it does feel like someone needs to be actually angry enough about this ridiculous situation of a backlog of over 700,000 driver's licenses that have not been printed for the last few months. And the backlog keeps growing. The best advice, though, Eddie, is that perhaps from what I've heard, carry your expired license and also carry your proof that you've applied for a renewal. If you have a temporary license, carry that as well. And I suppose that will have to stand you in good stead. But technically, you become an unlicensed driver. But sadly, this is the situation we find ourselves in with that particular situation of that machine breaking down from time to time, and the contract to renew, to get a new supplier also mired in a bit of controversy.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Our top story this morning, there's been a couple of them, in fact. The top story as far as Gauteng goes is the R59 protesting. The R59 appears to be open going north, coming up from Randval through towards Alberton, but there is a backlog there, but still closed. Definitely shut southbound, so quite a heavy queue once you exit Alberton on your way down to Randval. There's queues on the 59 into the closure at Heidelberg Road, and then some big backlogging going on that local alternative. If you want to avoid all of that, just use the R82 between Vereeniging Vereeniging and Joburg. A lot of extra traffic on that route this morning, but it'll just keep you away from the closure and the big backlogs in that area. R21's quite heavy, passing Tembisa on your way to Pretoria. Roadworks moving closer up towards the Olifantsfontein Road exit. Roadworks on the R21 that never seem to end. And the Mike 1 staying very busy this morning as well, from Boysons through to Parktown, then from sort of Melrose up towards Greyston Drive. It's all very heavily backed up. If you're driving into Kokstad to have a look at the snow, the later you can go, the better, please. It is inevitable. There'll be a lot of sort of snow picture hunters in that area today. We've had at least a couple of trucks this morning, big tankers, jackknifing and sliding on icy conditions on the 617 between Kokstad and Underberg. So still some restrictions along that route, but very cold, very chilly, a lot of snow in the area, and that'll keep conditions slippery. The later you go, the more the chance the sun's come out to warm it up and melt some of that ice away. Barclay Pass remains closed until further notice. A lot of snow falling in that Barclay East area. And Cape Town this morning crashed down on the South Peninsula. Boys Drive, you might find that closed at the top of Lakeside, and some very heavy traffic still coming in on Baden-Powell towards Strandfontein direction, Muizenberg, and a broken down vehicle at Hospital Bend. That's why the N2 from Bunga Avenue, the N3 from Newlands, and the M5 from Rondebosch, all those highways backed up trying to get through that Bend area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
Yeah, let's end it off on this note. If you were listening to us yesterday around this time, you will have heard us broach the subject of the funding crisis that some of the country's universities face following the United States' aid freeze, which has left key research and development initiatives in limbo. With 1.4 billion rand in outstanding funding across at least 13 institutions, the impact is reverberating through health, climate science and technology research, prompting universities to seek emergency relief from government and alternative international funders. Well, Wits University is among those institutions, with indications being that the cuts affecting major funding agencies such as USAID, CDC and NIH, that they threaten to reduce Wits' research output, and we are told by up to 30%. Let's hear it directly from Professor Lynn Morris, who is Wits' Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation and Research Professor in Virology and Communicable Diseases. Good morning to you, Prof, and thank you for your time. Do I have the picture correctly in as far as how this aid cut and cut to funding to the likes of USAID, CDC, NIH and other institutions, how it's affecting Wits' research output?
Good morning to you and your listeners, and thank you very much for this opportunity. You've got it spot on. This is a severe crisis for our country's health research and for our education system, the medical education system, and also our healthcare service delivery. It's having a major impact in all of those sectors.
So, at the time at which this was announced by the U.S. President Donald Trump, and we were witnessing almost the dismantling of USAID and the other, institutions, the PEPFARs, there was that cut. We were hearing stories about people being in the midst of important lab work and basically being told that the funding for this is done, it's over, and basically having to recalibrate and restart. Give us a sense of which areas in particular. What does that look like? Is it merely about the jobs being lost, or is it critical work that was helping humanity in advancing health research?
Yes, thanks for that. So the U.S. government funding, as you correctly stated, there are multiple streams, and the USAID funding stream, which largely supports, some of the service delivery components and health system strengthening components, that was immediate termination, and that had, very severe consequences for the communities that benefit from these services. The withdrawal of funding for the research component, which is largely funded through what's called the National Institutes of Health, that some of that has also been terminated, and some of that is still to be terminated. So in those cases, we do have opportunities to wind things down. But let's be clear, these were long-term projects that are being stopped prematurely. And that's having a serious impact on. That's where the impact is on the universities and the research outputs, because research is a long-term endeavor. It takes years and years to develop new drugs or new vaccines or come up with better ways of administering drugs or drug regimens. And those things have now been are coming to an end. So we as a university, and in fact the whole university sector, is having to reprioritize and to obviously trim down its activities significantly, without losing. We don't want to lose the decades of investment that have been made in this, and we need to preserve some of this capability and some of this research platform.
The report is that Universities South Africa is asking National Treasury for about 2 billion rand in relief funding. What does that translate to for you as Wits University, and what's the best thinking about where to source what you need?
Well, in actual fact, the ask is quite a bit more than that. But we, and of course we recognize that, nobody's going to be able to replace this funding. But we thought it was important that the total impact was recorded. So in fact, it is more than that. It's 4.6 billion rand. That is the funding that is going to be lost in the next, 3 to 4 years. But what we're really asking is that we, as I say, try and preserve the core elements of what has been built up all over this years. Because the one thing about researchers, they're real self-starters. And so they are already looking for other sources of funding. And they, so we need to give them that sort of breathing space. So we need this, that's why we need, some emergency funding in order to basically get us through this rough patch. But, I'm pretty sure that people are going to, be able to rescue and resurrect some of this, probably not at the same scale that it was at, but it is an opportunity, as I said, to refocus, realign, and perhaps change direction a little bit, because some of the funding priorities have also shifted internationally, and so it's a chance also to realign with funding availability.
All right, Prof, I've got to thank you for your time. That's Professor Lynn Morris, who is Wits Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation, and also Research Professor in Virology and Communicable Diseases. And that's it, really. That brings us to the end of today's edition of The Morning Brief. With full credit and honor to the great Jim Clancy, I'm Thulasizwe Simelane, and you've been briefed.
In our top stories, local manufacturers pressured to shift to low-carbon operations, and US condemns sanctions imposed on Israeli cabinet ministers. Good morning. Results of a study by Nedbank and the National Association of Automotive Component and Allied Manufacturers has highlighted